There's no question I wasn't leaving, but I mean, one passed to and then one passed to Travis and then the field goal range.
Yeah.
And then he just,
But that's a chip shot for him.
Yeah.
50 yards, 49 yards. Yeah, he did.
Right.
A little bit too much draw on it. But so many things have to go right with that. I mean, it can't be.
All right, we're going to call the meeting to order. We're going to start with the Pledge of Allegiance. Administrative Assistant John Wolfer, 33 years of service. Thank you for your service.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please remain standing while our chaplain, Lenny LaGuardia, comes to lead us in prayer.
Let us pray. Father, I'm reminded in your word that it says that a good effort would leave the inheritance to our children and even our children's children. I pray today, Lord, that our decisions as leaders, it would leave an inheritance of justice and righteousness upon a generation that will follow us in this city. I pray for the hearts of our leaders. I pray for the heart of our city, Lord, that you would be in the center of all that we do, all decisions that go forth today and throughout this week. I pray you would continue to guide and protect our families, the families of Blue, families of our leadership in government, Lord. I pray for peace within this city, Heavenly Father, and I pray that you, Father, you would be made known in the city of Kansas City. I pray these things in my Savior's name. Amen.
City Council presentation by the Mayor's designee, Councilwoman Heather Hall.
Good morning, President Tolbert, members of the commission. My name is Heather Hall. I'm the 1st District Councilwoman in Kansas City. I serve on the Finance, Governance, Public Safety Committee and the Legal Review Committee. I'm glad to be before you today. I don't have a ton to report other than that we all better get our skates on, because the next thing we're going to be talking about as we come in the next few months will be the budget. And that's going to be a big project. We're going to have to work as a team to do the best things we can for the police department, for the citizens of the city, to keep them safe. And just like what the chaplain said, it's our responsibility to move forward for the inheritance of our future. And that inheritance, I'm hoping we're going to leave them, is a safe, peaceful city. And so that's what I'm hopeful that we can do through the budget process. I will tell you that on February 10th, we will receive our budget books from the city manager. So we'll have about 700 pages of a $1.7 billion budget to go through. And many of those pages have your names on that. So we want to make sure we do that in a fair way. We want to make sure we're transparent and we're telling you how we want to do it and hearing from you on how we want to do that. So that not only are we doing the right thing, but we're also doing that in accordance of how we do that with relation to the other departments that we need to serve in Kansas City. So thank you very much. I'll stand for any questions.
And thank you. Of course, we have taken, I think, a forward leap this year on working with the budget. We've had more meetings this year than we had last year, for sure. And so
Whether you like it or not.
appreciative of the city council and, of course, of the chief and the mayor for a meeting we had last week. So we are above the curve, hopefully, this time. Any questions for Councilwoman Hall from any of the other board members?
Great. Well, thank you very much for your time. Have a good day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Heart of America Regional Computer Forensic Lab, Director Zachary Jury, have a presentation this morning.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for your time this morning. I'd like to introduce myself along with my deputy director here. My name is Zachary Jury. I'm with the Kansas City FBI local field office. I am a supervisory special agent and the director of the Heart of America Regional Computer Forensic Laboratory. My deputy director is Jason Steinke, Detective Jason Steinke with KCMO PD. And so we're very fortunate to have Jason in that position, given our partnership with the department. So what I'd like to do this morning is just tell you a little bit about our work at the lab in general, and then highlight our partnership with KCMO PD. So the RCFL program is a national network of 17 FBI-sponsored facilities. We are accredited laboratories for digital forensic, and we also host several trainings. We serve our law enforcement agencies and our partners in the designated service areas. The Heart of America Regional Computer Forensic Laboratory currently has the same jurisdiction as the FBI field office, 2/3 of Western Missouri, and all of the state of Kansas. So that's the area that we serve, along with sometimes helping out St. Louis because they have a smaller program over there. We're devoted entirely to the examination of digital evidence in the support of investigations involving criminal and terrorist activities, and including other national security programs. The main thing about the RCFL that separates us is that we are nationally accredited. We're accredited by the American National Standards Institute and the National Accreditation Board in both digital and multi-digital media evidence. So we handle just about everything that comes in the door. Currently, we have 16 participating agencies that include federal and local partners. KCMO PD was one of the first agencies to become a participating agency when we opened in July of 2003. So we've been partners with this department from the very beginning. I would especially like to highlight former chiefs and current Chief Smith for the amount of resources that they provide for us. They are our most highly active participating agency in the number of submissions, case submissions that they provide to us to process, as well as they provide the largest number of task force officers at the lab that are certified digital forensic examiners. So we have a great partnership with KCPD. And along with that, I just give you numbers that have been publicly published. From 2018 to 2020, we've had over 250 case submissions and processed over 80 terabytes of data. Now, the numbers aren't officially out for the last 2 years, but I can tell you we've doubled those case submissions and are well over 100 terabytes of data. So we are well on our way to continuing to do that mission, especially with KCPD and the resources that they provide us. So this is just a list of our partner agencies, Department of Justice, obviously Western District of Missouri and the District of Kansas, but there are 16 participating agencies at the RCFL. So this is what it used to look like, right? Pretty simple. The old brick telephone, some of them were as big as your backseat of your car with the phone case that you carried with it. And then of course the huge old computers that processed by hand and spit out tapes. But this is what it looks like today. And I will tell you the challenge of digital forensics is exponentially grown, but we are meeting that challenge. The FBI funds the training for all digital forensic examiners. We are the gold standard when it comes to digital forensic examinations, and our digital forensic examiners are top of the line. The individuals that have come from KCPD, which I appreciate Chief Smith, but all of our agencies, they send us the best. They don't just send somebody's over there that's kind of clocking in and clocking out. These are the best in the country at our lab, and I'm very proud to say that, and I don't say that sheepishly. I'm very proud of the work that we do there. So you can see some of the devices that we come in and get in to the lab. The services that we offer, we have a kiosk so people can come into the lab and do a phone extraction right there at the lab. We service cell phones, computers, all kinds of other electronics that are too long to list. Audio video services. You guys know that we had a big part in the January 6th processing of video evidence at our lab for local cases. So that's, and we do video evidence for all of our departments, criminal activities, and we'll get that video evidence in and we'll decipher it and recover it. And the camera is pretty helpful when it comes to solving and fighting crimes. Vehicle forensics is another one that's pretty big, some really unique capabilities that we have there. And we also provide search warrant assistance. In doing that, we draft and advise on that. We can help planning for any search warrants. We can be on scene and grab the evidence, tag it, and for evidence submission. And we can do on-site imaging at crime scenes. So we do a lot of that over the course of business. We also provide training, and that's probably our biggest selling point. We provide investigative training to local officers, to our agencies. We have a very robust training program that's going to be implemented with KCPD as far as detectives and their digital forensic capabilities and how they collect evidence, how they use evidence in a digital format in order to solve crimes. We provide field services training and we provide vendor training. A lot of our tools are commercial tools, and we have partnerships and contracts with those vendors, and they will come into our space and provide local training to all of our agencies and even our non-participating agencies. So we provide a lot of training. A couple of things I want to highlight just to close. Some of the capabilities that we've been able to enhance is our collaborative, almost in real-time collaboration when we get a device in and we get the evidence off of that device and we collaborate immediately with the detective. We just recently had a case, and I can't go into details obviously because it's a pending case, but we were able to, from start to finish, get that evidence back to the detective within 36 hours, and that individual was charged with murder 1 just based off the digital evidence. One of the things that we're looking into, if you want to look into a case study, is the Las Vegas Police Department and the way they increased their clearance rate of homicides. They got almost into the 90 percentile in clearance rate. And so we're looking at how to do that quicker, move faster with our partners with KCPD, and get those phones back or the digital evidence back as quickly as we can to help decrease our homicide rate here in Kansas City. That's one of our main focuses, violent crime. With that, I will conclude my presentation if there are any questions.
And do you partner with any of the other police forces, Grandview, Raytown, Independence, any of those?
Yes, so we allow for 5 case submissions from our non-participating agencies. So we do that don't have a physical detective assigned to the lab. We do partner with them and we accept those cases up to 5, and then we try to get them. I send a letter and ask the chief to consider providing a resource to the lab.
Commissioner, can I make a couple comments?
Yes.
I would like to say it's impressive, Las Vegas, their clearance rate, but this is where investigations is headed. Yeah, I mean, every violent crime that we have now usually has one of these involved in some capacity. And the staffing of this center and the outcomes that we get from those investigations or that investigative part of it are growing more and more significant. So I see this as only becoming more valuable. We were very lucky to get the RCFL here in Kansas City, and I've asked extensively how our center does compared to others across the country, and we're top notch. And really something to be proud of the partnership and what we are achieving through the RCFL here in Kansas City. So I wanted the board to understand, because I think going forward, we're going to see many more tiebacks to the RCFL. And I wanted you all to have some background in it and understand what we're talking about when we say, hey, evidence is going here and there and why it goes there.
If I may, how are we doing in being able to handle the volume? I'd assume now, since everybody's got a smartphone, half the time they're putting them pictures up or what have you. Are you able to handle the number of either cell phones or other items brought to you? Do we have some staffing challenges there? Just kind of what's the lay on the land of your ability to respond to the challenges you face?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. We never have enough people, just like all of us with the challenges, especially with manpower and law enforcement. So it is a significant challenge, but we are in our ability to clear phones, we're well between the 70 to 80% rate of having the phone and being able to give it back and get some kind of digital evidence off of it. We would like to move faster. What we've had to do is prioritize, and we've done this, but even more so, we prioritize national security, homicides, and violent crime, and we move those forward and bring those in much more quickly. I think the greatest challenge is one of the most violent crimes that we handle a lot of is child sexual abuse material, or formerly known as child pornography. And those cases are just as critical, but the volume of them are enormous. And a lot of local agencies are able to take that on. So we kind of take on the worst of the worst. And so just like as an agency with the FBI, we prioritize our threats, and we prioritize. But the neatest part is this new collaborative tool to try to get it back in real time and have those success stories, especially on the homicides. That is an ongoing, and we're getting better and better at that. But yes, we like any laboratory, we do have a backlog, but we are among the best as far as a smaller backlog than some of our other partner labs, and it does come down to resources for sure.
And I'll just commend you, the story you gave about being able to get charges filed by the prosecutor. I think you said turnaround was 36 hours. That's exceptional. So thank you for that.
We are working very closely with Jackson County in trying to make that process and prioritize those cases with digital evidence for them. So we are working closely with them for sure.
Just about Las Vegas. Obviously they're fully staffed and able to get to things quicker, and how many homicides approximately they have per year?
I don't have the specific numbers of their homicides, but it is publicly available. It's been printed about and written about. But we have talked with them. It's the clearance rate percentage that they were able to get up, and but they went all in with resources on their own capabilities and their own internal department resources. Which is what Chief Smith is talking about, the moving of it and the combining of investigations and
They
streamlining.
partner with FBI out there also, I'm sure.
Yeah, there's a lab out, in that area, but not, I'd have to look. I can't remember exactly which. There's Silicon Valley and San Diego, and it might be Rocky Mountain partners with them. Salt Lake probably partners with them. So there are some regional computer labs that work closely with them.
Commissioner, I just Googled it real quick. 147 homicides in Las Vegas, and they're up 44% this year.
The number of homicides.
That's what it says.
But they clear 90% of them.
That was prior to that was prior to
Prior to
this
this
year. Yeah. So last
47%.
2018 is when they started moving forward. And again, their clearance rate, what they have their categories, so what that defines for them internally, but that's what their number is. Thank you.
Can I just ask, and I know these are long meetings, but I'm kind of interested in how you got involved in this area. Was it you were detailed to it at a certain point? Did you have a prior knowledge of it, or has this all been stuff that you've learned since being with the department?
No, this is a new endeavor for me. I was moved up to the lab in June. Prior to that, I had been a part of our FBI's intelligence program. So I learned, and the day I walked in the door, thanks to Detective Steinke, it has been a fire hose education. But I will tell you, like anything that we partner with, the level of excellence and the commitment of the digital forensic examiners is exceptional. And that was immediately, they are proud of what they do. They are constantly on the cutting edge, constantly innovating, and they want what's best for the city and our community. And so I would say I walked into an incredible situation. And the previous director, Sarah Lucas, left it in great hands. So I commend her greatly for those efforts. So,
Thank you.
Well, and I have to tell you, I visited the crime lab yesterday, and it was very, very impressive. And they were talking about working with you guys and how successful that's been. And I got to see all the information too, like Ring doorbells nowadays is huge as far as getting cases solved as well. So that was really neat to see. And I guess, as you said too, our biggest challenge in getting things done quickly is just staffing. And that was one of the things that they had told me, that it's taken a lot longer in all the areas to get things done just because we're really low on staff there. But really impressive. So thank you guys for what you do.
and I'd like to thank Chief Smith specifically, because he has been ironclad committed to not lowering our numbers. And I know with the staffing shortages here, that means a lot to us and to the mission. So I appreciate that. And so it's always been the case with the department.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Our next presentation is Metropolitan Community Colleges, Blue River Police Academy, Dr. Thomas Meyer, Dr. Kim Beatty, and Mr. Craig McMahon. Yeah, it's going in and out.
Good morning, everyone. I'm so glad to be here with you today. It's good to see you all. Thank you, Mr. Chair, Mr. Mayor, and the commissioners. We're excited to be here to demonstrate and share with you important information about our Public Safety Institute. Our Public Safety Institute is housed at the Blue River campus out in Independence, and it houses our police, fire, and EMT training. We have with us today our president for that campus, Tom Meyer, is here with us today. Also, the vice president, Ryan Kreider, and the director of the Public Safety Institute, Craig McMahon, who is going to share more information with you. I failed to introduce myself. I'm Kimberly Beatty, and I'm the chancellor of Metropolitan Community College, where we have five campuses within our district. So I'm going to turn it over to Craig so he can share with you information about our post-certified institute and how we might be able to be an affordable option to partner with the city in training the future workforce.
Thank you, Chancellor Beatty, Dr. Meyer, President Tolbert, command staff. I'm going to present information about the Metropolitan Community College Public Safety Institute to include the history, course offerings, cost, college credit, and a brief comparison table. Within the provided packet, you will find the presentation outline and 3 handouts detailing post-mandated curriculum, PSI curriculum, and Kansas City Police Department curriculum. In 1995, the Metropolitan Community College of Kansas City, and with the assistance of the Department of Public Safety, developed the Police Academy to assist law enforcement agencies train and certify their employees. Through continued enrollment and agency requests, MCC offered up to 4 police academies per year to include 3 overlapping full-time programs and 1 part-time program. To align with the traditional college semester, MCC now offers the Police Academy with the traditional areas in the fall and spring, and an evening and part-time academy in the noted semesters. In addition to the Police Academy, and as noted by Chancellor Beatty, we offer a Fire Academy, an Emergency Medicals Technician program, and they fall under the same guidelines of the Police Academy model. All 3 programs are housed under the Public Safety Institute, which is housed at the Blue River campus. Currently, the Department of Public Safety's core curriculum includes 600 hours of instruction. Upon completion, a student is eligible to sit for the peace officer exam. An academy may elect to offer additional hours in the core curriculum that they deem necessary to their program. The PSI offers an additional 160 hours of curriculum in the subject areas of active shooter response, crisis intervention, defensive tactics, firearms, physical training, and practical application exercises. The in-district cost to attend the Police Academy is approximately $6,152. This includes tuition, fees, books, supplies, and uniforms. A student that is sponsored by an in-district law enforcement agency is eligible for this cost regardless of their home address. Traditionally, to advance within the law enforcement ranks, an officer must have a minimum of 60 college credits or an associate's degree. Upon successful completion of our academy, a student earns 37 college credits. Depending upon the student's pre-academy college enrollment, the credits earned may allow them to complete an associate's degree in a shorter amount of time when compared to a traditional full-time student. If a student enrolls at a 4-year institution, the college credits are transferable. As far as a comparison, and to be fair, the information obtained from the Kansas City website is just their post-curriculum, which is available in that packet. In comparison, the hours offered by the PSI are 760, and to exclude the Kansas City specific courses, they offer 906 hours. That was based on the 164th entered class from 2018 to 19. With our instructors, we offer municipal, county, state, and federal. They come from municipal, county, and state and federal agencies. Our college, as mentioned, we ask for 37 hours, and our annual academies are 2 full-time and 1 part-time. Thank you for allowing myself and administration to present this. Open for any questions.
How many graduates do you usually have per year?
Based on an average of all the classes, it's between 10 to 15. As with all academies, there's been a decline in recent years.
Do you see a portion of them going on to receive their associates, or what's the continuation rate?
So I can't provide a percentage. However, we do offer the police science program that is available both in class, and there are portions that are available online. It is the wish of the Metropolitan Community College that they continue their college education, and we provide them the resources to do so.
So a lot of programs, that have a educational piece, they also provide an inroad into some of the entities. So have you all had relationships with Kansas City, Grandview, Raytown, any of the actual police departments?
So through our career services division, we offer through both the Fire Academy and the Police Academy a job resource. So we have an 8-hour day where we have an opening for area departments to come. We do basically speed interview. It's a 5-minute process. The recruits are asked to develop a resume, which they do previously, and they provide that to the agencies that are there. At that time, the agencies are allowed to provide any resource that they would like to showcase their department and why they may be beneficial to that student.
I do. On the handout for the Kansas City Regional Police Academy, what are the highlighted yellow? What do they mean?
I can attest to that. I'm not sure, ma'am. That would be a question for their staff.
Thank you.
You have someone there?
No,
This is Dr. Myers, campus president,
Okay.
and I will allow him to, if there's no further questions, he will. Yes, sir.
Do officers from Kansas City who go through the Kansas City's police academy, are they able to get credit for going through that academy towards their associate's degree?
There is a transfer process that through our criminal justice faculty, they verify any academy's curriculum. They match it with what we provide, not we as in the college provides, and they match up as close as possible. It won't be the 37. Usually it's between 20 to 25.
Why is that?
Based on what they provide and what we provide, there is a breakdown for the criminal justice program, and it's an in-house, this is what we offer versus what they would offer. I can't provide specifics on why that is, but that's traditionally what it is. In addition, it's college specific. So if it's just like a transferable college credit, some colleges will accept your curriculum, others will not.
But that is something that we could easily work out in a partnership. So we could set up an articulation agreement whereby all of the credits would transfer in. We just would need to sit down and make sure that the curriculum matches. And if there were some type of formal partnership, then we could take all of those credits as well to apply toward the bachelor's, toward the associate's degree. So there are ways to work that through, and that's just a more formalized agreement. But right now, students coming in would have to go through the transfer process, and that's when the transcripts are evaluated. I just wanted to add that.
Thank you.
Have you tracked any of your students, let's say over the past 5 years, how many or what percentage of them have actually gone on into law enforcement with some department?
So as far as our graduates, our most recent class, all but one went on to law enforcement. And it's over a 90% higher rate through our program.
How many of them KCPD, or do you know that?
I can attest through my career in law enforcement that people that have gone to that academy have transferred to the Kansas City Police Department.
How are you guys recruiting the students for your programs?
So through community partnerships, through the Chamber of Commerce's, through our high school relations with counselors, through those jobs, we have counselor fairs to where we provide information for all of our institutional instruction. So with that, we will have open house, career day, campuses or high schools will come bring a small group of people to tour the facility, and we have those conversations. So with the Department of Public Safety has basically a restriction to sit for the post exam. You must be 21 years of age to be an active peace officer. So with the gap year program, we are in the process of developing a general studies curriculum for the first year, and then they would automatically fall into the police academy the second year. And more than 75 to 80% of their curriculum will already be completed towards their associate's degree.
So rather than lose high school students' interest,
Right.
get them interested, let them complete that first year of college, and then transfer right into the police academy. We're hopeful that'll work. We've been in discussions with Independence Police Department, independent school districts, as well as Fort Osage to implement that starting next year. So fingers crossed that that'll be an effective recruiting tool.
Super, thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you.
Thank you for your time.
I'd just like to say thank you again. We're here to answer any questions. You have a packet that shows the comparison. We downloaded that directly from your website and from ours. And thank you again. We look forward to maybe being your partners, not in crime, in law enforcement. So thank you.
Thank you. All right, according to our agenda, we're going into our crime reporting, and I don't have a name on that.
I'll be doing that
Hicks?
for Joe while he's gone.
All right.
Good morning, Commissioners. You'll find my information is under tab D in your books. You should also have a hard copy of the daily homicide analysis report or the blue sheet in front of you. Before I really get started with my information, though, I want to have Captain Cobalt of the Law Enforcement Resource Center come up. He's going to discuss end-of-year homicide and aggravated assault rates for 2021.
Morning. Thank you for having me back to discuss the violence again and doing a little bit of a review of 2021. My name is Justin Cobalt. I'm the commander of the Law Enforcement Resource Center, which includes our real-time crime center, which also supervises the RCFL personnel from KCPD. So we'll dovetail into a little bit of that, but then also our gang intelligence squad and our perpetrator information center, which is really our crime analysis entity of the police department. So a brief overview of this presentation. We'll go through some of the context of violent crime in Kansas City, as well as nationwide, looking at some 2021 crime data, specifically looking at homicides and non-fatal shootings. We'll look at some observations and some of the strategies and programs that we're working on here in Kansas City. So the context, not here today to sugarcoat or anything like that. When we look at this, the very first bullet point here, 2021 was the second highest homicide rate we've ever had in Kansas City. But that's not where the story ends, right? There's a lot of other things to talk about here. Kansas City is part of the national conversation regarding the increase in violence. Again, this is something that we've seen specific to violence. Really, crime overall across the country is down. But violence, homicides, and non-fatal shootings are up across the country, and Kansas City is no exception to that. While some have said otherwise, many positive steps are occurring with regard to reducing violent crime in Kansas City. As I was going through preparing for this presentation, it's really difficult this close to the beginning of the year to get a picture of where everybody's at across the country. So we do rely a little bit on the news and media articles. The more detailed data comes later on in the year through the FBI. They're kind of the stakeholders and the caretakers of criminal justice data. And so we'll get a real good picture in a few months. But there are some other tools we were able to use. But also looking through that, sometimes it's a little bit discouraging seeing some of the perspectives of people that are partners involved in this. And I just want to recognize, and we'll go through some of these today, that there have been a lot of positive steps occurring across the country in regard to reducing violence, but particularly here in Kansas City. And I think it's really important to point those out. When I look at this is not something we're going to solve year to year. It's good to see a reduction, but this is something that it's going to take a long time to truly have a safer Kansas City. But obviously we want to make the strides that we can. I mean, we must look at what is working and understand where Kansas City sits in the national landscape. So to just say it's another high year and to go back to the drawing board, I think we're probably somewhere in the middle there. So starting with homicides, in 2021, we ended the year with 157 homicides compared to 179 in 2020. Obviously, 2020 was the highest we'd ever experienced in Kansas City. So we did have 22 fewer victims, which was a 12% decrease. The 5-year average over the last 5 years is 155 homicide victims. So we were 2 above that. Getting into the clearance rate conversation, again, I think this is something important, hearing what was discussed in the previous presentation by the RCFL, but also, again, as I was going through and preparing for this presentation, seeing some of the talking points that are out there in regard to clearance rate here in Kansas City. For 2021, we did have a 68% clearance rate for homicides, which was down from 73% in 2020. However, when we compare that with the national average in 2020 was 54%. So we were almost 20% higher than the national average in clearing homicides. Again, we won't know that number for 2021 for a little while until the FBI releases their report. But certainly that is a thing we can look at. Are we happy with 73% or 68%? No. And I think the actions that we've taken in terms of investigating and kind of getting into the whole enforcement strategies, I think reflect that we always want to strive that number as close to 100% as we possibly can. But it's also important to understand what is the average, right? And I don't think a lot of people that speak to the conversation necessarily know what the national average is because we are significantly higher than that. The next slide on homicides, I won't go too in depth on this. I'll circle back around to some of the geography on the non-fatal shooting when I'll show a similar slide. But this is plotting all the homicides, the 157 homicides from 2021. Certainly, obviously, most of them are south of the river in Jackson County. This map has looked similar probably for my entire career and before that. But again, I'll touch on a little bit more on the map here in a couple slides. Flipping over to the non-fatal shootings, we ended 2021 with 500 compared to 630 in 2020. We presume that 630 was the highest, just like homicides. These are going to reflect pretty well. Non-fatal shootings are not something that separately had been tracked up until, we've probably been doing it here about 10 years. It's a manual process. These reports are aggravated assault reports. And so it's a manual process to go through in our real-time crime center and by our crime analysts to pull out the ones that are involved a bullet to skin injury. And so for definition's sake, I just want to clarify when we're saying non-fatal shootings, this is a bullet to skin injury from a criminal act. So it's not a drive-by shooting into a house where nobody's hit. That's obviously an aggravated assault. It's investigated, but we're specifically talking about people in our community that had a gunshot wound from a criminal act, not an accidental discharge, anything like that. This is a criminal, generally an assault or a robbery, or a living victim from, where somebody was killed in a homicide. So we had 130 fewer victims, which was a 21% decrease. Again, we recognize we're coming off of a high year, but a 21% decrease, I've not seen that in looking at data from other cities. That's a remarkable decrease in non-fatal shootings. So again, back to the map, similar map for non-fatal shootings. These are the 500 living shooting victims and where those crimes were reported to have occurred. The point I'll hit on, and I've touched on this in some previous presentations, we see the biggest cluster The general boundaries are St. John on the north, 85th Street on the south, Troost on the west, and Topping on the east. And this is what we see as a little bit of a triangular or vortex shape. This is 10% of the landmass of Kansas City. It's 33 square miles. And it year to year, over the last about 15 years that we've been looking at this, accounts for anywhere from 70 to 80% of the violent crime in Kansas City within this 10% area of landmass. So, certainly there's a lot of reasons and causes for violent crime, but when we're just looking at the geography of it, this is the reality of where the kind of disproportionate amount of violent crime is occurring in Kansas City. So some observations. Again, some of these we've talked about in previous conversations, but in 2020, when Kansas City set their record, murders in the United States rose by nearly 30% compared to 2019. This was the largest single-year increase ever recorded by the FBI. Again, the FBI is the kind of caretaker of crime statistics and data when we're talking about this, and they've been responsible for that for a long time. So we recognize that Kansas City was certainly a part of what was going on across the country. Criminologists have been, coming up with reasons, and there's a lot of reasons and theories as to why this has occurred, but that's the reality of where we're at. The next bullet point, more than 2/3 of the country's 40 most populous cities saw more homicides in 2021 than they did in 2020. So again, we had that massive spike in 2020, but more than 2/3 of the most populous cities have seen an increase in homicides for last year. Again, Kansas City, we trended down just a little bit, and so just kind of seeing where we sit in this, it appears, again, there's been some numbers put out there, but I don't want to speak to them because they're preliminary in terms of what that increase is in 2021 over 2020, but homicides are definitely up again in 2021 over that previous high of 2020 across the country. One good tool that I like to use, unfortunately, the fourth quarter or the full year of 2021 was not put out yet, but the Major City Chiefs Association does a survey quarterly of violent crime in the major cities. There's, I believe, 70 cities in that group, and 66 responded in the third quarter to this data request. And at that point, there was only 6 cities of the major cities in the United States, so 6 out of 66 that had seen a decrease, not percentage-wise, but of the number of victims of 10 or more homicide victims. Kansas City was certainly in that one as well. But again, only 6 had seen what I guess I would categorize as a significant reduction. And that was why I just went with the number of 10. And as I'm going through the list looking at it, most cities, again, overall, again, saw an increase in violence, but there was a few cities, to include Kansas City, that were fortunate to see a reduction. This map I pulled from an ABC News article as I was, again, gathering some information from various resources. These were the 12 cities that are known right now. It's possible there can be some others once the official data is collected. But these 12 cities in 2021 that have broken their annual homicide records. And I was trying to go through and confirm, and it looks like the majority of these broke their records last year and then broke them again in 2021. So just not really a pattern to it, right? North, south, east, west, all across the country, we've got major cities that are experiencing this explosion in violence and continuing to break records. So some observations, again, closer to Kansas City. Violent crime was down in Kansas City. Really all crimes against persons and crimes against property were down. But, when it comes to the violent, it's still too high. We have a lot of work to do as a whole community. A couple things I wanted to touch on. KCPD is leading the way within the Public Safety Partnership and Community Safety Partnership with implementing improvements under the enforcement strategy. So one of the roles I got put into a few years ago was to be the chairperson for the enforcement strategy. This is an effort that's supported by many of our partners, to include the city and the mayor's office, the Jackson County Prosecutor's Office. Mayor's office is in charge of the prevention component of this. The prosecutor's office leads the intervention strategy, and then myself and the police department on the enforcement strategy. The unique thing to the enforcement strategy is most of those are held within the police department and our law enforcement partners. So we're able to very quickly implement and make some changes, and we'll hit on some of those real quick. But true violence reduction will be reliant upon the evolution of the prevention and intervention components amongst all partners. And this work is ongoing. We continue to have weekly meetings. We've had a lot of people come in and help us and support in the prevention, intervention, and enforcement. And I'm really excited to see where those goes. My personal opinion is that obviously to have a true large reduction in violent crime in our community and have this be the city that I want my kids to raise their kids in, we really need to figure out how do we prevent people from getting into a path of violence, right? And that's something that I think our whole city is working on, and there's a lot of people doing a lot of great work. So some strategies, these are really going to be more specific to, again, the enforcement component. If we're talking in the public safety and community safety partnership role, and some things that we've done to address violence, we recognized obviously early on in 2020 that violence was spiking and Kansas City was experiencing that. So a lot of these were things that were rolled out back then. It's not something we've just started and realized crime's going up, right? This is something we know and we're able to feel as it's happening. The shooting review, that was a big one, and especially as we talk about looking at the national landscape. That's something where we recognized another city that's similar to Kansas City is doing something really neat, right? So we went up with a contingent from our department and partner agencies, went up to Milwaukee. We observed what they were doing, learned from them, brought it back to Kansas City, and I think tailored it to something that's working here in Kansas City. And I think that's one of the biggest things that we've done to improve our response to violence. Risk for retaliation dovetails into that shooting review. Obviously, Sergeant Janita Harris was here a couple months ago and gave a presentation on that. I think that's a great program that we do in the Law Enforcement Resource Center, something that's continued from the KC Nova days, that is really helping have conversations and prevent retaliatory violence. Identifying and addressing group violence, really that same group that's responsible for the risk for retaliation. They're one of ours in gathering intelligence to recognize if we have group or gang violence occurring. We've got some good projects going right now to address some of those issues in our city right now. Increased investigative staffing. Obviously, not too long ago, we increased the staffing within the homicide and assault squads, and that has been something that has been great in responding to the crime that is occurring. Evaluation and recommendations on crime meetings. This was something that was a strategy within the strategic plan for the public safety partnership. And essentially what this means is we've done an evaluation of the crime meetings that occur at our patrol divisions. We sat and observed on Tuesdays, every patrol division holds a crime meeting to go over the crime that's occurred in their station and their patrol division over the previous week. And then on Wednesday, we have a citywide crime meeting. Well, we sat in on all the crime meetings at the different patrol divisions to see what they're doing. Maybe something's working at one patrol division that could help another, and to try to develop some best practices. So that's just something that was something that came out of the public safety partnership. That's, again, something we've completed and improved upon. Crime Gun Intelligence Center. Fortunately, we had a BJA grant a couple years ago that helped us facilitate and get this off the ground. Long story short, partnership with the ATF to really strategically target the active shooters in our community by linking guns to crimes in a timely manner. This is something that on average took previously in years past up to 13 months for us to know that one crime was linked to another. Now this is something that takes 48 to 72 hours. So that's a massive turnaround. Dovetails into the technology thing. Obviously, as we were talking and hearing from the RCFL, investigating and being a detective is a lot different than 15 years ago when I was a detective, right? The technology has totally changed, and it's become something that, detectives have to be really good at talking with people like we always have, but they also have to be really good at understanding technology and leveraging our resources. I think Kansas City does a very good job of that, as well as the technology within, for instance, the Real-Time Crime Center, cameras, ShotSpotter, all these things that help us respond and investigate crime. Public safety partnership, we've really already hit on that, but they've really helped kind of facilitate all of these bullet points above that in some capacity, as well as increasing that dialogue and relationship. I will say Kansas City, when we went 3.5 years ago to Birmingham at the beginning of public safety partnership, we had the best relationship already between all the criminal justice partners, especially when we're talking about between the police department and the federal agencies. Just really, it was already a robust partnership that's been made better through this process. And finally, Project Safe Neighborhoods. I wanted to include that as well. That was a partnership with the U.S. Attorney's Office and some grant funding they received and the Metropolitan Crime Commission. They've provided some funding for some resources, as well as for 2 employees and analysts that work on targeting group violence and gun violence. So that's really all I have. Again, I'm not here to try to say that 2021 was a perfect year, but it's to put the entire thing in context, and to make sure that our, we recognize that our community and the people working on this issue, from the police department to the neighborhoods, the city, the prosecutors, everybody. I think Kansas City is more than just a number, right? I think it's disingenuous to say that things aren't being done to improve this. And so I hope this presentation, I guess, expanded the conversation a little bit. But I'm happy to entertain any questions or comments.
Captain, I want to say thank you for the presentation, and Captain Cobalt's been very helpful coming over to City Hall, both with the Public Safety Partnership, Community Safety Partnership, and appearing before City Council. A few quick points I want to note, and I guess reaffirm what you had said. I was at the United States Conference of Mayors last week, and actually helped co-chair a presentation with a Thomas Chittum, the acting deputy director of the ATF, who spoke very highly of you, Chief Smith, and spoke very highly of our department and the cooperation we've had. And so that meant something. He singled me out to talk about that, and I wanted to share that. There was also something interesting, and Captain, I appreciate how you've kind of cabined it for folks, because we live in our wheelhouse, and we think our battles are bigger than everyone else's and all of that. I visited with the new mayor of New York City, who talked about the very fraught relations between prosecutors' offices, mayor's office, department, et cetera. Just the ability for us to get together and talk, even where we disagree, I think is exceptional. And Kansas City, I will say, is actually light years ahead of a lot of other places. Those are places where the mayor appoints the police chief and everything else. There are still these substantial battles, and I think this is helping us address them. And then I think a theme that I've seen this morning, and I hope it continues in future presentations, does speak to technology that we're using, how we're making sure that we're integrating not just with federal systems, investing on our own side, because I do agree, Chief Smith, I think you're seeing, at least in all the presentations that I've heard and perhaps some that you've heard, that's kind of the game changer on departments that are able to make positive changes long term. And so I thank you for both these efforts, sitting down and talking to anybody, no matter what they said yesterday, and making sure that we keep doing this work. And it is noted, I think, the progress we've had compared to a lot of places. That same conversation with the mayor of New York, and we're all cognizant of, they lost an officer this weekend. They've had challenges themselves. Our trajectory, at least, seems to be different than these places. We don't know how long it will go, but I hope we stay on that path. So thank you.
So, Captain, you mentioned a 21% decrease, and then you just kind of went ahead. What do you contribute that decrease to?
In the non-fatal shootings? There's several things. I think a lot of the programs we've talked about are certainly assisting in that. Again, there's the reality of we were coming off of our highest year. So you're likely to have a bigger decrease if you're doing the right things than you normally would. But I think certainly shoot review, there's no doubt that is helping, right? Can I prove that that's prevented crime? It's hard to prove that, right? But every single week we're in this room going over in depth all of these cases, and targeting the people that we're looking for, where there's accountability to it. We know that there's a specific squad that is looking for this person, right? Where, I don't know, in the past, it could have been that a warrant got put into a system or an advisory where we're looking for somebody for this crime and we have probable cause. But maybe the detective didn't reach out and let somebody know that I put that in the system, right? None of those things. We're targeting advancing the investigations as well as apprehending the people that are responsible for the shootings or the homicides on a weekly basis. And there's accountability to it in between those meetings as well. And so I think that has to be part of it. And I think, again, that whole bullet point on the previous slide, I think all of those programs play a part in it. And I think to some degree, all of those programs have improved this year over the previous year. So I think it's putting our efforts in the right places that's attributed to that. And it's not, again, I don't think this is necessarily just the police department, certainly not just the police department, right? We have the responsibility for responding and investigating and trying to close these cases out. But I think there's also other things going on in the city and the community that are hopefully preventing and intervening and doing the things before we do get to the shooting. So we hope to see it go down. I think, you know, the end of the year ended where our numbers went up a little bit, and January has started that way. So we hope to see that turn around a little bit. But there were some times there where it looked like the numbers could be even better. I mean, that's a pretty remarkable change, regardless of what the circumstances were.
Thank you.
Could I add in here?
Yes.
The one thing I would add to Justin's presentation, did a great job, Justin. I would say is that our partnerships, when we had Operation Legend, we really embedded some of our federal partners in our agency, and those relationships never left. ATF is working with our assault squad every day. FBI is involved with our violent crime and our violent crime fugitive task force. And, you know, we are very fortunate. The marshals sit into the meeting at Shoot Review, and we have someone who runs out of state. We have someone in this room who is actively giving us updates of how the residence checks are going in New Mexico and where we stand. And we don't let those things go. But none of this would be possible without our partnerships. Jackson County Prosecutor's Office is in the room every time. We ask them, hey, can we file this case? Can we go back and look at this old case? Our federal prosecutors are in the room. None of this would happen without our strength in our partnership. So I just wanted to add that piece of it, to know that, you know, we have a great relationship with our partners both ways, but that is really the strength of this organization. I think it's the strength of why we see the trend going a different direction than other cities, is because of those partnerships and because we are actively working together to bring less violence to the city.
And the 6 cities, including us, that had a reduction in violent crime, have we reached out to them, or should we reach out to them and see why they've had success? Just out of curiosity. And a second question, well, you start with that one if you want to, but.
Sure. Well, not yet. Now, some of these we have. We've shared programs, again, Milwaukee, things like that. We're always looking at new ideas. But that's something definitely when this year-end report comes out and we get the picture of their whole year, I think that's something we'll definitely entertain. I think also it's recognizing what's working in Kansas City. And we do have a finite amount of resources. And sometimes I think you can't always run that risk of trying to always try the new thing and implement something. But you know, we're always open for that conversation. So I'll say we haven't necessarily reached out to those yet. Let's get the year-end picture here, which I hope we'll have within the next couple of weeks, probably from the Metropolitan or Major City Chiefs Association. And that's something we'll obviously explore, yes.
And the second question, I mean, we talk about technology and how it's improving things and that sort of thing. And I know we got the spot shotter and license plate readers and mobile cameras and so forth. I mean, that's at least technology that we've got, know how to work it. Maybe could expand it or should expand it. And then is there anything that you know of that's new technology, like these cell phones and that sort of thing that we need?
I can't think of a specific example right now of a new technology. We're always evaluating it. I get emails every day from companies and salespeople of technology that's out there, and it's expensive technology, right? So we know the ones that are really helpful right now. Obviously, cameras in the high crime areas. I mean, again, we looked at the maps, right? We know where a lot of our violent crime is occurring. So what can we put in that area to help with an investigation? I think those things are beneficial, but we always have our eye out there. There's some new things we've been looking at. Technology that can maybe help us review video faster, because a detective or an analyst can sit there for 5 hours trying to find the green car going through this intersection, right? And there's some technology that might be able to make that more efficient that we're trying. And so, there's always new technology and it's always evolving. It's just trying to figure out what can we afford, and is it actually something that's useful? So we're always doing trials and looking for those tools. But I couldn't tell you right now, this is the one thing that we really need. The chief might.
Do you have enough mobile cameras?
We could always use more. And that's always something as we're looking through grants, and sometimes you get to the end of the grant and there's some money left there. And that's always something that we pitch to say, well, hey, that could equip, 15 more cameras for Kansas City. Because, I think we're getting to a point where some of them are going to start failing. We've started to have them for a while. But also, just increasing the coverage that we have is always going to benefit an investigation.
This is not directly on point for what you were doing, but I'm wondering if there's a way to reduce the number of guns in our community. Any ideas?
Wow.
That are constitutional?
Pass.
Let me help, Justin. I guess the best answer to that is we're always looking for ways to reduce guns, but laws that are in effect now that weren't 4 or 5 years ago hinder us in that endeavor, but we're always working on that.
Well, and along those lines, I was at the crime lab, and just this weekend, we got 18 guns from one zone that they were going to go through and fingerprint and everything. I was like, that's just this weekend? They're like, yeah, just this weekend. So I know it's a huge problem, and you guys have done a fabulous job considering what we're getting out there. It's scary.
Yeah. And a lot of those do, if they're not an active investigation, they sometimes do get, released back to the owners. But it's a problem. And that's, when you talk about what are they saying nationally, that's certainly one of the big bullet points they say is, likely contributing to an increase in violence. It's just the easy prevalence of guns.
But I will say we do, as a department, with the help of our federal partners, we do a pretty dang good job of getting the guns that we know are involved in crimes off the street.
And that,
Identifying them and getting them off the street.
exactly. And technology and the crime lab have done a great job. That's why you end up picking up all the shell casings and all that. And connecting one gun from this crime to another crime. I understand that part. It's frustrating when you read about how many guns were stolen from people's cars. It's just, maybe it's education.
I would say that would need a policy change at the state.
Oh, of course. But if there's something we can do, and something the city can do as the city council, I don't know. But if somebody's got an idea, I'd like to hear it.
And I know that a lot of the problems that we're hearing is people going out to the bars and taking their guns and leaving them in their cars. And the criminals know this, and they're going and they're checking immediately, breaking windows, checking under the seats and the glove compartments. Maybe we can get some signs up everywhere, just kind of creating that awareness, don't.
We do a
Don't
lot
bring
of,
them or lock them up in a safe in your car where they can't get to them.
we do a lot of notifications about guns, leaving any property in your car, and it just falls on deaf ears. We've been doing it for years. It is, like the chief alluded to, it's something that's going to have to be changed at the state level to make it harder to keep those guns in the cars and making it.
Or at least have them locked up or
at least have them locked up. But again, that's at the city and state level.
Where this began was a few years ago. You'll remember we made a change in Westport. And one of the unintended consequences of that was this. So the city did make a change where we vacated the sidewalks, and then we put in metal detectors because we were having crime in Westport. One of the unintended consequences was now we have thefts from autos because everybody leaves their gun in their car because they're going to have to go through a metal detector to get into Westport. So if we do think back a few years ago, and the mayor could probably talk to because there was quite the debate over that back then.
Better a stolen gun than a shooting.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, but that stolen gun frequently used in a shooting. It's just later.
All right, well, that's a problem we're not going to solve today.
Thank you.
So,
Yes, thank you for your presentation.
If I may though, to Captain Cobalt's point, in every one of these mayoral meetings, and I don't know what the police chiefs meetings are like, it's the biggest issue. I mean, the guns that are flooding so many of America's cities. And, and not to get into Second Amendment debate, kind of like nobody wants to, just the ones that are sitting in the car outside the bar district, that's, if there is some way, the city's tried what it can. That vacation idea in Westport was probably one of the most creative things I've seen that we could do within the law. We gave up the sidewalks, made them non-public, so therefore they would become private. You could set up metal detectors, people couldn't bring them in. I don't know how much of the city you can do that to, but the secondary effect has been that everybody just leaves them in the car, shockingly wholly unsecured, or mildly secure, but you just break a window and you get them anyway. And so, we'll keep looking at if anybody else in other cities has good ideas for it. I know the council is always interested in what they can do. Most things are curtailed by the state legislature. So for example, other cities in America have ordinances against leaving your gun in your car unsecured, and that's a crime in and of itself. We can't do that here in Missouri. There are other ordinances relating to requiring you to report a stolen firearm. That's not lawful here, at least as we read it. And so we'll keep, trying to see, because I think all of us, nobody's trying to go into somebody's house and a law-abiding gun owner and, take anything from them. But, somebody who's potentially solving bar fights or something and run into their car after a night of drinking, we'd prefer them not have them. So we'll keep working on it.
Maybe some lockers before you go in the metal detectors where they can lock them up.
If only whoever's securing that area, though. Yeah, Thank you.
Thank you, Justin.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you, Captain.
Okay, I'll finish up with my information. Again, it's under tab D and in the handouts that you were given. We've had 8 homicides this year compared to 7 last year at this time, for a 14% increase. The 5-year average for homicide year to date is 9, so we're 11% down for the 5-year average. You also have the paper copy of the non-fatal shooting comparison report in front of you. From January 1st to January 24th of this year, there were 33 non-fatal shooting victims in Kansas City. We had 27 this time last year, so we're up a little bit already this year. Under tab D on page 2, you'll find the December 2021 non-fatal shooting report. It shows that of the 30 non-fatal shooting victims in December, 22 were initially cooperative with detectives. 8 or 27% were uncooperative and did not wish to press charges against whoever shot them. Black males accounted for the highest number of non-fatal shooting victims with 17 or 57%. The second highest number was with black females with 6. There were also 5 white male victims. There were 9 known subjects involved in shootings. 6 of the subjects were described as black males, 2 as black females, and 1 described as a white male. Of these 9 known subjects, 3 were in the age group of 18 to 24, 3 more 25 to 34, and 2 were 45 and over. On page 5, you'll see the recovered firearms report. We recovered 148 firearms in December compared to 138 in December of 2020. So we're up a little bit there. And for the year of 2021, we recovered 2,376 firearms.
When you count recovered, Commissioner Kramer mentioned how many they'd taken in over the weekend, and someone said sometimes they have to give them back.
Yes.
So the recovered firearm, does it sometimes go back, or are those the ones that they don't get back that we destroy?
No, we recover and give back. So out of that 2,300, and I can probably find you or get you close to them. A lot of those guns get given back. A lot of the guns we take, like that got stolen from Westport, got stolen the week before from Overland Park or South Kansas City, we give them back to the rightful owners once we
Know who they are.
do our tests with them and can identify and they can prove their gun.
So I can't say that those are off the street. They're just in other people's hands.
Correct.
Thank you.
Can I ask a quick question? This comes from naivete as well, because every time I've been at a gun shop or shopping for one, they're like, that'll be $400, $500 or something like that. And I guess that's how us law-abiding people have to deal with it. Where are most getting a lot of these firearms? I mean, from thefts and I don't know, is it pawn shops and others, or maybe there's regulation we can have to do with it?
It's really not from the gun. The bad guns are coming from they're being stolen a lot of the time. Someone in the neighborhood may legitimately own a gun and lets their friend borrow it, for lack of a better thing. And what we found, because we can trace these guns, a gun that's used in a crime, a violent crime, we can track it. It's going from group to group. And once it's got that life of being a bad gun that can't be used legitimately, it's traded amongst those groups that are in the violence.
So amongst the
Gangs or just groups. It's pretty amazing to watch how quickly these guns travel from around the city and the metropolitan area. Next, I'll move to discuss case submissions to the county prosecutor's office. During the month of December, KCPD submitted a total of 331 cases to county prosecutors. 285 of those were to Jackson County, 36 to Clay, and 10 to Platte. Charges were filed in 115 cases during the month, and 29 cases were charged in custody, and 95 warrants were issued. 39 cases were returned for additional work, and 116 cases were declined during the month. For 2020, we submitted 4,250 cases to the state prosecutors. In 2021, really the same, 4,251. So we're the same in the cases we're submitting. In 2020, 1,933 cases were filed compared to 1,744 in 2021, or a 10% decrease. And a lot of that decrease has to do with our reduction in staffing, as well as the Jackson County Prosecutor's Office revising their guidelines on drug prosecutions. And subject to your question, that'll conclude this part of my report.
Questions? All right, thank you. Did you cover the community outreach with Crime Stoppers? And
I'll follow that part, Commissioner.
okay. All right.
First off, we have Detective Christina Ludwig, and she is with the Kansas City Crime Stoppers, and her presentation is under tab F in your book.
Well, that's a perfect segue for my presentation, with all the guns out there and the violence. Good morning. Thanks for giving me the opportunity to come and talk about our Crime Stoppers Tips Hotline program. As she said, I work for KCPD, but I'm assigned to the Crime Commission. Been around for a couple decades. But I am blessed to be assigned there because I truly believe that this program makes a huge difference in our city. So with that in mind, I'm going to talk about the program. So just like the investigating, how to investigate the crime has evolved, how to report crimes has also evolved on our program. We started off in 1982 with the hotline. So it was a phone number. Thankful, along with the times we've evolved into the text-a-tip, and now we have the Crime Stoppers webpage, which is kccrimestoppers.com. On this webpage, it's a secure website. So on this webpage, you can download the P3 app, which we have. We also have evolved and gotten an app for people. It supports both Google and Apple, and it explains to you how to download it from our website. You can also check on the status of a tip. You can also learn about our Crime Stoppers program. You can make a donation to the program. But most importantly, you can safely and anonymously leave a tip without using the P3 app if you don't want to. So you can download the P3 app, but you can also just leave a tip. So this leads me to our latest creation, which is the KC Crime Stoppers QR code. Now, if you've been out and about the last couple of years because of COVID, nobody wants to touch anything. So you have to scan the QR code at a restaurant to get the menu. Well, that's what this does. If you scan the QR code, it takes you straight to our website where you can do all these things that I just talked about. So the first week of January, we launched it on our Twitter, on our Facebook, the Crime Stoppers, as well as the Crime Commission, the KCPD's website. We added it to our Crime Stopper webpage, and then also we put out the Kansas City Most Wanted digital newspaper, so we put it on there too. We've reached out to our media partners, talking about partnerships earlier and just how important it is that we have them. Our media partners, I was interviewed by Kathy Quinn on Fox 4, and I've sent a flyer out to all the stations to ask them to put the graphic up when they're talking about their most wanted or when they're talking about any kind of crime story. This was also presented at the Metro Chiefs and Sheriffs Association. It was well received. I gave them an idea to put this QR code on sticker size. So for the detectives to put them on the back of their cards, their business cards, so when they're out, they can hand them out as they're on scene canvassing. So I have delivered those to our homicide, and this would give an easy way for the public to just scan the code and privately and anonymously deliver some information, vital information. We also put it on 4x4 stickers. So we have Crime Stopper material, promotional material already out there, especially in our schools. And so we're gonna stick these on the promotional materials. I think I just feel like it's huge for kids to be able to easily access the website so they can leave something. They know a lot out there. So we've also involved our PAL centers, our SROs, and DARE officers. So I'm trying to get this out to the entire city and all of the agencies that we cover, which are 9 counties worth of agencies. So I didn't want to bore you too much, but I gave you some statistics just to show you where KCPD is represented. This is a tip summary report. As you can see, Kansas City, Missouri Police Department got 1,490 tips last year. The total number of tips we got last year was 3,905, which is circled on that next paper. So 13 tips were submitted, directly led to the arrest of the suspects last year. So 13 huge cases were solved because of a tip. And the total reward payout was $88,350 for Kansas City, Missouri Police Department. As you know, our homicide tip reward is $25,000. So we solved 3 of those. Actually, yeah, 3. This is just an example of the QR code flyer that I sent out to all the agencies. And then the banner with the new code on it that we will be putting up in schools who are willing to participate. And that is my information if you need anything. I also just wanted to point out that Crime Stoppers, we are wholly dependent on law enforcement partners. We really, really need the detectives to be encouraged to follow up on the tips and then let us know what happens, because if we don't know what happens, then we can't present statistics and things like that to show how effective it is. So the whole goal in this QR code is to provide a safe way. So I'm working really, really hard with the board members of the Crime Stoppers. They have agreed to be liaisons to the different areas, school districts, and getting them in the schools. Because I believe with the uptick of the school shootings that have been going on, kids really need a way that they can relate to, in a private way, an anonymous way, and a safe way to give that information. And so I'm asking the schools to put them in the bathroom stalls so kids can feel like they can actually go in there, scan the code. That sounds like Hy-Vee.
I just
Say
wanna-
it here.
I want to add, when we talk about prevention and intervention, our Fusion Center takes all these threats in that we get from schools. And I can't tell you how many hundreds of these we go through a year, but there's no doubt that the school situation, we have a much higher level of cooperation. We have people who want to report. We have engagement as soon as it happens. It's a unique in the segment of violent crime of how quickly things can work and maybe how things should work in other areas. But I mean, in our school system, we've got it down pretty well that if we get a threat, it's going to go straight to a detective. A detective's going to make notifications. The school's immediately brought into the fold. All of those things happen very quickly because of the routing we have. And of course, again, this happens with our partners. The FBI is a huge partner in this, and the resources that we use for getting things and notifications done and outreach to other people, just partnerships that they have. But it's reporting like this that prevents these things. I knock on wood that, this is one of the things we never want to happen here in Kansas City, and we've been very fortunate. But I got to tell you, my tenure in chief, we probably had a couple that probably could have turned into something had someone not stood up and said, hey, I'm worried about individual A and what they're thinking about doing. So I will say this is a huge piece of trying to prevent that kind of crime, is to having this access and allowing people to know how to gain that access right away.
Have you seen any uptick since January, since you've put the
Well, it's
QR code out?
I'm sorry, I have not. I haven't been able to really look at that because we just really started putting it out the beginning of January. But yeah, there's a drop down on the website where it asks where you heard of us, and I did add the QR code, so we're hoping to track that.
Have you seen an increase in the number of tips since the reward was increased?
Oh, yes, sir. Absolutely.
So in other words, 8 is quite a bit up from where it was, or whatever, convictions or whatever.
The homicide?
Results that we had.
That list you had of, I think, $88,000 total.
Oh.
Yeah.
I did not compare it to the year before. I apologize, but I can get you that information if you would like it.
And then I mean, to that, do you think it's that tips, the reward, and the tips and so forth is extremely well known where it needs to be? I mean, we talked at one point in time about should be on the bus stops and should be on the buses and things like that.
Yes.
Have we done that?
No, that's something I am moving to do as well. I would love to get this in bus stops and on buses and airports and train stations. I want it all over in every business. Quick Trip has agreed to start putting it in their bathroom stalls as well. So this just isn't a school thing. It's not just businesses. This is a whole entire city, the whole entire 9 counties that we cover. And it also doesn't just involve criminal activity for the schools. It also, they can report bullying, and they can report possible suicidal tendencies of themselves or their friends. Since 82, we have helped prevent 18 suicides. So this is just to get this into the schools. They cannot download the app. Most kids cannot without their parents' permission because of the restrictions on the phone. So this bypasses that. And this gets them straight to that page where they can say something.
There is some some other things that could be done. Like we've talked about where we have a violent crime occurrence, that when we have the money and we can match that with the technology, it would geofence that area. And just like an ad for Facebook that talks about a certain product or something, the people who would be in that area on their electronic devices would immediately get information about how to report a tip. And we'd like to move towards something like that. Of course, it's dollars as everything else, but there's some advances in technology that could really make this, right at the point where people we think may be, more apt to give information, if we could catch them at that point.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. The next presentation is from our social worker, Kevin Wilson, who is assigned to East Patrol Division.
I'm sorry, where'd you say his?
Kevin Wilson from East Patrol, our social worker.
Tab E?
Tab.
What tab?
Oh, tab. His presentation is not under a tab, I don't believe.
Okay, thank you.
Just a PowerPoint.
Sorry, Kevin.
Good morning, all. Thank you for having me here.
Morning.
Morning.
And just picking up off the theme of partnerships, like we've been talking about all morning. In my division, we have what's called a special resource meeting every Tuesday morning, where we discuss high-profile EDPs, emotional disturbed parties, and we just try to work on community partnerships and thinking about how we can work with our local partnerships and community groups to address these people and reduce calls to service and things like that. And so I have started striking out partnerships with family courts and JAC personally, because a young man that I've been working with who came into contact with us, unfortunately, he was reported as a runaway. His mother painted this strong narrative that, he's a terror in the household, intimidating his siblings, yada, yada. He's one of 5. He's the middle child. Father's not involved. Mother remarried his stepfather, and they essentially don't care for him. So his mother contacted me, saying, she wanted a welfare check on her, a welfare check done on her son. So we found out that he attends East High School. So me and a couple of my community interaction officers, we responded to East and made contact with him, and just blew my mind how great the kid is. His principal pulled us into his office and just absolutely went to bat for him and said, hey, I've known him for XYZ years. He's a great kid. He participates in school sports, has good grades, great attendance, so on and so forth, completely demolishing the narrative that his mother had painted for us. And so then at that point, we're like, okay, interesting. So then we asked him, what can we do for you? Unfortunately, his mother will not release any of his personal items. So toothbrush, socks, so forth. She's maintaining all that, birth certificate, ID, all that. So he's basically been out on his own. Thankfully, his girlfriend's parents have allowed him to reside over there. So we found that to obviously be a huge problem. Thankfully, through these partnerships, I was able to get him connected with the JAC. They have a program called Emerging Adults. So that's for youth who are 16 and a half and going on up to about 20. And so I'm getting him connected with that. And then also, thanks to some generous donations from my East Patrol family, we were able to get him some clothing and other essential items and different things like that, so that he can go to school and not be stranded out and left to the wolves. So with the Emerging Adult program, they will help him get connected with, college preparatory things, helping him get ID, because he told me that he would like to work, because, with him turning 17 in March, he understands that adulthood is right around the corner. And unfortunately, mom is not helping him prepare for that. So, those are just some of the different things that, we try to do with, our social services and things like that, maintain these partnerships so that a lot of our youth, because unfortunately, he's not the only young man that I've recently come across who was in a similar position, but that's a story for another time. But this young man, at least getting him involved in these services will hopefully prevent him from, of course, spiraling into getting caught up in the streets and so on and so forth. So, I could go on, but I just want to give you a brief synopsis of some of the partnerships and things that we've been working on, at least in my division. If you have any questions or comments.
Well, thank you very much for what you
Yes.
do.
Yes. He can't even get his own birth certificate, like from this, does he know what state he was born in?
Yes, so he was born here, but because, mom being
Okay,
resistant, I've also got him connected with legal aid. And so he's discussing emancipation. So that's something that we're kind of on the fence about. So hopefully, if legal aid is willing to take his case, that might be something that he'll be able to work towards. But, unfortunately, not all parents care about their children.
but they don't want somebody else to
And
care.
they don't want exactly. They don't want someone else to do it either.
Thank you very much.
So I'm interested in your emerging adult program that you put him in. Is that like a nonprofit that helps him, or what exactly does that?
Yep. So that's
entail?
through JAC, so the Juvenile Assessment Center. So they have a large grant fund that's just literally dedicated to young men and women in that age catchment group, where if they meet the criteria, then they'll be, able to access, college prep, independent living, different things like that. And it's a quite large fund from what I was told. And they give preferential treatment for police referrals, so that also helps out tremendously with maintaining partnerships like that.
Great. Thank you for your service.
Thank you, man.
Thank you for your work.
Yep, happy to help. Thank you.
Thank you. As a graduate of East High, it always warms my heart when I hear stories like that. And I wanted him to tell a story today of how the police department is making an impact in this young man's life. It's great. I appreciate all their hard work. Our next presentation, they're a little noisy, if you might have heard them. It's our K-9 section, and I have Officer Scott Nelson. I'm here to talk about what the K-9 officers do and give a little demonstration.
Hello, everybody. We're going to do a quick demo if Captain just wants to go get them. We have a training aid set out so you guys can see how the dogs work. And then I'll go into a little bit of you. Well, since he's not in here, we have 12 dogs in our unit. 6 on days, 6 on nights. 2 of them are sergeants, the rest are officers. They're all dual purpose dogs, and here they come. This is K9 Storm. He's a 9-year-old Belgian Malinois, and his handler is Carl Reinecke. He is one of 5 bomb dogs, and we have 7 drug dogs.
Hopefully it hasn't detected anything in here.
That's what I was going to say. Did he say Glenn has something in his pocket?
Right. Checking everything out.
Doing his job.
The dog stopped working, locked up, gave an alert, so we know that he is at an odor that he is trained in. Bomb dogs have roughly like 15 different odors, give or take some. There you go, 20 plus. The drug dogs, we only have 4 odors. I have the newest dog in the city, and I'm the newest dog without marijuana. So I have meth, cocaine, and heroin. We take our dogs home. We are the sole provider for these dogs. We're with them 24/7. We have a shift on days, shift on nights, and we cover 20 hours of the day. We're required every week to have weekly training, maintenance training. So every Wednesday we are training from the start of our shift till we go home. And that's required by law. And we also have to meet a certification standard, which we certify to the National Police Canine Association. All our dogs are dual purpose, so we're trained in patrol and detection.
What do the patrol dogs do?
They find the bad guys. Their main job's a locating tool. They locate everything they're trained to find.
Yeah, how many shepherds and how many?
Currently, we all have Belgian Malinois.
They're all Belgian Malinois.
You guys use them for searching like lost persons too, or?
No, because these are bite dogs.
Okay.
We're not going to use them.
Gotcha. Yeah.
For something like that. We have other people we can reach out to that we can use their dogs.
Other departments. Okay.
We only go out for violent felonies.
Well, that's a good thing.
Any other questions?
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Excellent.
Thank you. And the Belgian Malinois are very expensive. They're around 15,000, and of course, price is always increasing on them, plus the training. But the officers do go down and they pick out their dogs from they're about a year old when they get them. And they do have a bite suit. I told them not today. It's hard to get a volunteer, but they do have a bite suit where they teach them, to bite.
They train every Wednesday. If any commissioner would like to go down, you might want to wait until the weather's a little bit nicer. But we have a course out south that they have their facility at. So if anyone would ever like to see one of the trainings, it's pretty impressive what the dogs are capable of doing, how they work with the handler. So if you'd ever like to see that, we'd love to have you.
Right. Then this is my slideshow presentation. New Year's Eve, just want to do a recap about New Year's Eve. Our media office did a great job doing a press release. The mayor was there just talking about, please don't have celebratory gunfire. A couple years back, we did have a young lady that unfortunately lost her life from a stray bullet. The bullets go up, they have to come down. So this is our yearly message. This year we had 1,162 rounds detected on our gunshot detection system versus 1,623 in the prior year. So it is a decrease, which we're very thankful for. We had 259 calls that night, calls for service on sounds of gunfire, and 11 reports of property damage. We did have one police car that was damaged. The officers were sitting in their car. They were at Metro Patrol. These are tactical officers, and you can see on the screen that where the bullet ricocheted and came down.
Oh, goodness.
And just our traffic summary as we're wrapping up the year. In 2021, we saw 85 people who lost their lives in motor vehicle accidents compared to 103 the year before. Little statistics on who we lost in 2021. A quarter of them, or 25%, were aged 20 to 29. 73% were male. 63% of those killed did not have a safety device, and 28% were impaired, whether that be drugs or alcohol.
And I just wanted to jump in. You can see under 2022, we have 8. This time last year, we had 3. You can see the increase. I don't know if this is going to be a thing this year, but we're very concerned already that the death rate is really high. And I think 2 of those are pedestrians, correct?
That is correct.
2 pedestrian deaths of pedestrians on the roadway being struck. So this is not looking like a good projection. If this were to maintain, obviously this would be really bad. And we're talking to our traffic unit and see what we can do about this. But I wanted the board to keep an eye on this as we go through the year. This is something we're going to have to keep a close eye on.
Do you think more of it's due to the marijuana being legal, or?
I mean, we've had presentations from traffic about the increase of people we think are impaired from marijuana versus just alcohol. As we put it, we just put impairment. We don't characterize which way it goes. But I can't say specifically that's it. I think, people are driving faster. I think there was huge articles after COVID and how many less people were on the road and how speeds increased on freeways across the country. Again, not just here. This has been a national thing. It seems like we have some carryover from that. People are driving extremely fast. When we have a pedestrian who is in a freeway or on the freeway, so to speak, it is very dangerous at any time and at night in dark clothing. People are tired, just not enough reaction time. And that's a dangerous combination. And I'm sure you can, we've had other incidents in the city involving overpasses and things like that. We have a lot of people hanging out on the freeways and under bridges and things, and it's maybe contributing to some of our problems here. So we're going to continue to look at these and what we can do to help solve this and prevent people from getting hurt.
And of course, they're not wearing their seatbelts. Which
No,
we just talked earlier today about people not following common sense things. Seatbelts is about the most basic.
Oh yeah, if we could, take that percentage and everyone put in a seatbelt, obviously our totals wouldn't be as high. But that is a difficult one. It's kind of like, as Mike was talking about, for 34 years I've been on the police department, we've said don't leave things in cars. We've gone around and take pictures of the things that are in the front seat of cars to try and educate people. It seems like we've hit a plateau on some educational pieces. Seatbelts is another one of those, even though we enforce and we do ad campaigns and we do all kinds of stuff about seatbelt usage, and yet we still can't get the compliance that we need to drive down the numbers.
And just some stories from December to wrap it up. We had a police officer who thought this was very special, so they organized this. First responders from all over the area, including KCFD, the fire department, all did a route around Children's Mercy Hospital just so that the children there could just get a little bit of joy and see the lights and everything. So it was just a little extra holiday cheer for the children that were in the hospital. More Christmas shopping. This is the Target up by Liberty, and just officers out there shopping, and then they were able to deliver the gifts. Just more of the social workers. They had a family that was in need, so they went shopping and delivered the food. The DARE program, always a great time, especially they're glad to be back in the classrooms, just visiting the schools and teaching the kids about avoiding drugs during the holidays. Santa sighting, so the domestic shelters always need stuff around this time of year. So all the children staying at the shelter received a stuffed animal from Santa. Socks. Socks are always a needed item for homeless. It's the most requested item that we get from our shelters. So 2 high school students from Staley, they collected 1,400 pairs of socks and gave them to KCPD so that we could deliver those to the homeless population. Captain Renty was just recently promoted, and during his promotion ceremony, his PAL kids that he has mentored and been with for years came out and all supported him during his promotional ceremony. So it's just great to see the impact that he has made in these kids' lives. And that is it. That completes my presentation. And if you have any questions.
Questions? All right. Thank you. Great report. Department staffing update. Deputy Chief Hicks.
We're going to start off with a presentation on recruitment. I have Captain Marissa Barnes, who right now is the acting division commander for the Human Resources Division. And I also have Sergeant Betty Acco, who is our longtime supervisor of our employment section.
Good morning. I'm Marissa Barnes. I'm the commander of the employment unit. This is Sergeant Joe Bediaco, supervisor of the employment section. And as the colonel mentioned, Sergeant Bediaco has been with the.
Please speak in the mic because there are people viewing.
Yes, sir. Sergeant Bediaco has spent a number of years in employment, both as an officer and now as a sergeant. So he's going to speak a little bit about our recruiting efforts.
Good morning.
Morning.
Yeah, still morning. Basically, I'm going to talk about what minority recruitment is, but more so diversity, and I'll kind of jump into that a little later on. what the unit does in terms of the employment unit, service sources we utilize, and what we've been doing and will do. So basically, when we talk about recruitment, there's no magic bullet to it. And I've spoken to my peers in other departments, even across the country, and we all struggle with this whole thing of recruiting in terms of trying to find qualified applicants, also trying to have a diverse applicant pool that meets what we're looking for or what the city or the department deserves. So basically, when we talk about diversity, and I have a staff, we kind of talk about this monthly about what does diversity look like. And a lot of times when we look at diversity, we talk from a standpoint of minority recruitment, but it's not so much minority recruitment as diversity recruitment. And the understanding is that the idea of the department should reflect the general makeup of the community we serve. So me and my staff, we normally go through this and we kind of look at what we're doing and kind of how does that mirror that image. The understanding is the department should consist of a variety of different types of people from different backgrounds, experiences. This can include diversity in regards to gender, experience, socioeconomic levels, race, religion, sexual orientation, and so on. I always feel this is critical and important in terms of solving crime, because we heard about all the crime statistics and things like that from this morning. This is a critical piece in terms of policing, because if everybody looks at it and looks at the project or the problem from the same perspective, you can always get the same results. So when you increase the diversity on your department, the idea is you'll have more input in terms of ideas and creativity and how to solve issues and problems and things like that. So hopefully, as we continue to build on that, we can, well, like I said, let me go back to, it's a big problem, it's a big bite, but hopefully we'll get to a point where we have different ideas, different people at the table, and can come to different conclusions on how to go about solving things. As a unit, our job is to recruit the process and hire, again, the most qualified applicants to reflect the diversity community. A diverse team, again, helps with innovation, creativity, and achievement, and achieves better results. And that's also within the unit itself in terms of how the recruitment unit is made up, things like that. We're responsible for non-sworn and sworn applicants, so we handle both those sides. We try to apply that same principle to both sides of the house. Attract qualified applicants, stimulate them to apply. Again, that's identifying that population that we don't have on the police department, approaching them, talking to them about the ideas, introducing policing to them, and hopefully get them to apply to us. A lot of times you'll have what we call people who self-selecting themselves out the process. I run into that quite a bit when you'll talk to a young man or young woman and say, hey, you'd be a great police officer. And the idea they'll come back to, hey, I thought about that years ago, but because of this, or that, I didn't apply. So we'll sit down, we'll talk about some of the issues, some of the reasons they think they can't qualify. Some people, yes, if you rob the bank, yes, you're not going to qualify. So we'll have that conversation. But a lot of people, it's minor stuff. I've had a couple tickets years ago, had a warrant, stuff like that, and they disqualify themselves based on those things. So the idea is to kind of get to them where they're at, talk to them, kind of encourage them to apply. Working with applicants who do not qualify right now, but can qualify later. What I found a lot of times, speaking to a lot of applicants in the recent past, is when an applicant applies to us, they've applied to other departments, have been disqualified, but have no idea why they got disqualified. So the idea is to kind of sit down with applicants, kind of talk to them about what their disqualification was and how can they improve it. So a lot of times you'll have somebody who had, let's say, DUI, had a DUI 2 years ago. Post requirements is 3 years from date of conviction. So if you don't talk to the individual or have a conversation with them, they have no idea what it is. The only thing they know is, well, I applied to Kansas City, but I was disqualified by Kansas City. So we can sit down, we can talk about some of the things, say, hey, post requirements is 3 years from date of conviction. You're 2 years from that conviction. Have you been involved in any alcohol drinking? No, I haven't. Had that one time, it was a bad decision, whatever. So that person will follow up with having that conversation, so at least they have that knowledge and they know that, hey, 1 more year, you're eligible to apply. I have a tickler file. My recruiters keeps on 1 year from that date. We'll contact that person and say, hey, that 1 year passed. First question we ask, say, have you been drinking? Hopefully they're honest with us, but we go through the process of checking for their honesty and things like that. So the idea there is to kind of build for the future also, because the person coming in the door had some interest to be a police officer. So the idea to keep that interest by having this discussion with them as opposed to just saying, hey, you got disqualified and figure it out on your own. Basically, target places we've targeted: community events, military bases, HBCUs, historical Black colleges and universities, high schools and colleges. And I'll kind of talk about that in a little bit. Stakeholders, we've identified stakeholders, ones we lean on a lot: churches, schools, community events, and colleges. Churches, basically my thing is, you have a congregation, you have a pastor who is a shepherd of the congregation. A lot of times introducing that, the idea of policing is something unique, and it's one of those funny things. You have individuals who want to be police officers. From the time those little boys and girls, they've always dreamed about being police. Then there's those who don't want to be police officers for whatever reason it is. Then there's those that kind of thought about the idea, but other people are kind of putting the position, the job down, so they've kind of it in the back of their mind, but don't want to be part of it. What I found is when you involve these stakeholders know individuals who they come in contact, individuals in their community, church pastors know their parishioners, deacons, things like that, and they know people who either had ideas or who would be good police officers. So the idea to get them to encourage those individuals to be police officers, to help us out as we go, because the adage always goes to, hey, we need better policing, we need this and that, but no one wants to have their son or daughter, their friends or thing take that job. So the idea is that they will help identify individuals who they feel will be effective, and hopefully with that we can solve the issues where the narrative where police don't look like us, they don't care about us, things like that. So if they're coming from us, then the idea is that they're representing us, and we kind of will tie that piece together. Schools, great places, principals, they know some of their kids who will or will not go on to college, or some colleges know, this person will be a great police officer. I've known him for 4 years, stuff like that. So hopefully they're talking to their people. We're also in schools, doing presentations in schools, hoping introducing the idea of law enforcement. Because a lot of times kids are growing up, they want to be doctors, lawyers, and things like that, but policing is always that far stretch saying, if I can't do nothing else, then I'll be a police officer. We want to kind of change that narrative to, it's an honorable profession, it should be considered with the doctors, nurses, and things like that. Community events, basically being involved in the community, showing that the department is part of the community, because we are part of the community, we're made up of the community, but a lot of times when people look at police officers, they kind of think we come from this magical lands somewhere else, and we're not part of this whole thing, but we are. We've grown up in the communities, we're from the communities, things like that. Colleges, basically, great source of people looking for jobs. They're going to college, they're learning something, but their goal is to graduate and get a job. Basic things we're doing and have done. We switched to a national test. Before, you had to come to Kansas City to take our written exam. We've taken it on the road. Sometimes there's a written exam. We went to NTN, which is computer-based testing. You can go to an NTN site across the country, take the exam, and submit your test scores to us. So we found that that's helpful in terms of reaching a wider applicant pool. We've started hosting our own informational events throughout the city. We'll utilize Parks and Rec community centers, Brush Creek, Guadalupe Center. We'll have applicants come out. We'll talk to them. We don't care if one applicant comes out or 30 applicants. We'll talk to them, introduce the idea of policing, kind of meet them in a neutral setting, let them see that we're people and we don't have you come to a police facility. It's a weird concept. A lot of people don't want to come to a police setting initially, but so we've kind of done that, kind of take away. We're also hoping to hit people who are at the community centers just based on them working out or attending some program at the community center. Presentations at schools, like I talked about earlier. we're trying to lay the foundation that law enforcement is an honorable profession. So through presentations at schools, we also do mock interviews where we sit in as interviewers, and it's not police related, but we'll critique their interviews, things like that. And hopefully from that, we're building relationships for the future. Working Women's Empowerment Network, great resources in terms of recruiting. Military, great diversity pool of candidates out there. So we have different programs working with the military, and that we'll do out briefings as soldiers, men and women get ready to leave the military. They have sessions they have to attend. So we're part of those sessions. We're introducing the Kansas City, Missouri Police Department to them. The military has a PACE program where they have soldiers who they send out to do mentoring, things like that. So we're getting involved in that program. Department's YouTube page has been a great help. Kind of want to plug that. We've used that at recruiting fairs, even when we're testing, we're running some of those videos. So applicants who sit for testing kind of get a better idea. Because a lot of times you'll have applicants want the job, but really don't have an idea what it is. So as they watch those videos, they kind of get an idea early on, this is what it entails. Last one, testing, they saw the officers of East Patrol to ride along with them. So they kind of get a better idea. They'll do a ride along later on in the process. But what I've seen, a lot of applicants will attend the academy about a month or so, will come out and say, oh, it wasn't what I thought it would be. So we're still working on how to improve that. Obstacles we've faced the past few years, COVID, of course, I think that's wrecked a lot of people's plans. Civil unrest, budget constraints. We've had, in 2020, we had a large pool of applicants to hire. I think a lot of departments around the city have been grateful for us preparing those applicants because a lot of them did go to other agencies. So these are the things that we're aware of will happen. Well, hopefully COVID does come to an end. Civil unrest, we're hoping, we can't control it, but hoping that doesn't happen. And we're hoping that the budget issues get a lot better. What we need to overcome the image of the profession. Like I said, trying to introduce law enforcement as an honorable profession. Everybody wants to call the police, but I don't think people realize that in order for the police to be effective, you have to have everybody involved. And you have to have, I have 2 boys, so I've encouraged them, hey, this is something you might want to do. I get a little pushback, but we want to introduce that it is a career, it's a worthwhile career. I've been on 24 years, best time of my life. The only regret I have is I didn't start it sooner, but sometimes you have to go through life to learn things. The attractiveness of the job, it also goes to the image of the job, things like that. So some of the things trying to say that it is a worthwhile job, of how to get it to be more attractive. That's something that I think all departments struggle with. I've spoken to my counterparts. They've struggled with how do we show this job as being attractive. A lot of times you'll have people, if you have law enforcement in your family, a lot of times you'll look at it as an attractive job. If you don't, you tend to not look at it from that consideration. And of course, again, budget always issue that we have to deal with. That is it, my presentation. Any questions, anything?
Well, I might have a quick question. It's no longer a requirement for the Kansas City police officer to live in Kansas City, Missouri. Have you given any consideration about how to recruit from Lee Summit, Blue Springs, Independence, Raytown, whatever?
I mean, we've always recruited outside of Kansas City. And with the residency being lifted and stuff like that, we're still keeping the same course of action that we've been taking, because if Lee Summit Schools calls us up, we'll do presentations in Lee Summit Schools, we'll do events, things like that. So what we've moved to actually is more relationship based, and it kind of doesn't answer your question, but what we try to do is be more intentional in relationships. So as we're out at events and things like that, we're engaging individuals and we're doing follow-ups with them and kind of dealing with them a little bit differently, having that feedback if they don't qualify. So I think that is addressing some of the residency stuff where I just got requests on my table from LU in Jeff City. So we'll be in Jeff City. So while we're in Jeff City, we'll kind of visit other places and kind of talk to people and things like that. So I know I'm not kind of answering the question, but residency, what was the issue was when we reached out to applicants outside of Kansas City, the question coming back, can I apply if I don't live in Kansas City? So that part has gotten addressed. So the approach is still to continue the course of action that we're on, but we don't have to deal with the question that, well, are you willing to move from Blue Springs? Are you willing to move from that? So that question doesn't come up anymore.
So the presentation that you saw from MCC, have you had any direct contact with that program?
I haven't had direct contact with that program, but I've had contact with people who've graduated that program. And the problem always lies on, well, I've gone to an academy, I don't want to go to another academy. So that's always been that rub when we've spoken to people who've graduated from that academy. So in how our policy reads in terms of laterals and stuff like that, you have to be working for an agency. So if I've just graduated today from Blue River, I'm not working at agency, so I don't really qualify as a lateral for Kansas City. So we've had those conversations. Mo West is another one where we've in the same boat as Blue River, where we've had those conversations.
But I would think, not to interrupt you, but I would think that's something the board needs to look at is if people have been through an academy, how do we do an abbreviated academy so that we can get those folks in and it gets them in quicker because they've already graduated from an academy.
We can look into that, but at some point you are kind of comparing apples to oranges a little bit. But we do that with laterals now. They haven't come through our academy. So a lateral from, and I'm picking cities here, if a lateral from Jeff City wants to come over compared to a lateral from Lenexa, we have to look at those individually. There's not one program that covers all. It's an individual stuff.
I'd like to see us do that sooner than later because we've got people graduating from a college course right here in our town. And so the collaboration, you know, if we're at 1,200 officers now, we're trying to get to 1,300 in 2022. And eventually the mayor's going to give us enough money to get to 1,400. Our next problem after we get the money problem solved is actual recruits. And so we can continue to do the same thing or we can do something proactive.
And that's something we have discussed, and I'll let the chief speak to, of course, but again, their academy compared to ours and any other academy has to be looked at specifically. And it's not that we can't, but you're also missing a little bit of compared to the lateral stuff. Those laterals also have the field experience that been there, done that these people coming out of the academy don't. So there's a lot of factors that weigh into it is all I'm saying. It's not that we can't look into it.
I have many first-year teachers that come to our charter school, and the thing that they say is, I can't get a job because everybody says I'm lacking experience, but I'm going to college. So, you know, at some point, we have to compare programs and pick and choose and then say, these are the areas that we need you to maybe do a month in our academy rather than 3 months.
Correct.
But there's got to be a way forward.
So in the interim, we have several Kansas City police officers, including myself, that teach out at Blue River.
Really?
So until we can get that process going, we do interact with the students. And if we talk to them about, hey, why don't you apply to Kansas City? And we try to get them early in the process. So that way they don't complete one academy and then have to complete another academy. So we're working on we're thinking outside of the box until, something like this can be done. So.
But I think that's part of our job as the Board of Police Commissioners to put some fire under this process and make it happen.
So I have not been able to play contrarian yet today, so I'm happy to be here. And maybe I've been drinking the Kool-Aid for too long. I have great confidence. We spend time in this board talking about what we want Kansas City police officers to be, to learn, the recruitment we do. I have great faith in our academy, actually. And I'm not saying anybody doesn't. So let me be more direct. I have less faith in academies than I know less about. And so my view would be, how do we actually get those folks into our academy process rather than perhaps supporting some of the other law enforcement training we have all around the region, recognizing that there will be people at other institutions all around. I think there's something special. I'll give an example. I did a ride along in Los Angeles. I asked a gentleman, the officer was from New Jersey, said, "Why'd you pick LAPD?" He said, "Because I believe it's this wonderful, exceptional department, the likes of which I didn't have in New Jersey or anything of that sort." And then he went through their academy process. I think that a lot of our officers are attracted to Kansas City, its academy and its department, for much the same reason. And so what I don't want to necessarily do, again, with respect to all the officers trained at Blue River or in Kansas or anywhere else, I don't want to necessarily say, all right, well, Ed, you're not saying this, so this is just me. So I don't want to say we need to find 20 extras. Where in Western Missouri can we go? And so I might just suggest that I like Sergeant Vidiaco's work, and he's an officer I see other than detail more than anybody else at different community events at everything around the city, trying to get people started into the Kansas City Academy process. And I just think that we're on a stronger path if we're continuing to get all those folks as coming in at the Kansas City Regional Police Academy phase than perhaps some of the other programmatic efforts, again, with great respect to all of them.
Well, and you just heard the officer say some of our officers teach at Blue River.
Yep.
We make exceptions for laterals. When I look at the community college program, they're coming out of there, they have college credits. They don't have college credits coming out of the Kansas City training. So all I'm saying is that when you look at the betterment of the person, we are charged with finding the best fit to help people in the long run. In terms of even when they finish an academy, they've got 37 credits toward their associate's degree. Or let's sit down and say, when they finish Kansas City Academy, how many of those credits will transfer to college credits? It's hard work. I understand that. But if we don't do it, we're not really putting people first. And I think we have to consider the long range goal of helping a person achieve some personal goals along the way.
But I might very briefly, and this is with respect to higher education, where I continue to work, right? They have a different goal than we do, right? And not that Chancellor Beatty isn't trying to educate wonderful officers and all of that. They also have to get bodies in. We do to an extent, but I think this board is committed to making sure we're not just hiring 150 people that we can find. Sometimes at different levels and institutions, I think you might see at the college level, junior college, et cetera, they're getting a lot of folks in. Maybe they want credits to this. Maybe they'll change their mind and do some technological training and all of that. There's something to be said for somebody who wants to come to our police academy and says whether they're in the U.S. Armed Forces, four-year college, anything else, that they are just interested in becoming a police officer, going through our programs and our training. And that's where I think I would continue to kind of lay in a position and say that I want the sergeant's efforts largely to be in helping us get officers, perhaps getting a chance to get into communities where we haven't had the impact perhaps we've had in the past. And I think the benefit of having our officers teach at these other programs, one, it recognizes the strength of our officers and the reputation we have regionally. But then also, yes, perhaps somebody sees, well, I saw a Kansas City police officer and I was taking my class at Blue River or elsewhere, and that's a department I want to be a part of. I want to go through that training, but it doesn't have to be resolved today. I'll just kind of continue to stand up for channeling more people through us.
So, and maybe I misunderstood, but I thought our academy does transfer to other schools.
No, it doesn't.
They have to as a administrator said, they they can file for credits, for associate degree credits from our courses. They have to apply through a process and go to a metropolitan community center and actually physically go through the process. It's not granted automatically. So I would say to all of this point, there's a huge difference from people who go to our academy who are vetted, hired, and paid to someone who just goes to school and signs up for classes. These are two different calibers of people that have been vetted by the police department, and there's a wide range from one to the other. I'm not saying that we can't pick up some recruits at someone else, but I think one of the most important things that happens when someone either comes into this department as a new recruit, the academy is about as much of the culture of this organization as it is about the schoolwork. It is about becoming a Kansas City, Missouri police officer, something that would be totally missed if not engaged in this. Now, when we have our lateral program, there's specifics. They have to be officers for so long, the size of the city, it has to be comparable, all those kinds of things. When they come in, we make them go to the academy. We started out at 3 months. I think we're down to a month, depending on some of them. But again, for the same reason, so they get exposure to our culture before they just hit the streets. I mean, they could hit the street the next day by license. But what we want them to know is understand who we are, how we train our people, and why we do the things we do. And we try and incorporate that into our system when everyone comes out. So all I'm saying is there's room to always discuss what we want, but I think it's important that we have that touch to someone who comes out and wears one of our uniforms.
So I guess the big question to me would be on our recruitment program that we have right now, how effective have we been, and what are the numbers that we have right now going through the academy or getting ready to go through?
Now, to me, it's been very effective. Prior to 2021, we was on increasing numbers testing wise. We went from a yearly test to a monthly test where we're testing anywhere 15 to 20 something people every month. So with that said, there's the other issue of processing where people get vetted and fall out based on the vetting system. But we have a lot of people coming into the process. What tends to happen is when the narrative gets out that we're not hiring, that has a trickle effect, and it takes a while to build back up that we're hiring. So it's hard to compare because at one point we're moving steadily, and I can give you a little anecdote. In 2009, we went through a financial situation. It took us until about 2011 for people to realize we were hiring. Then we just gone through this new cycle of financial situation. So a lot of times the narrative out there is that Kansas City is not hiring. And I know when I go out and we're talking to people, it's, oh, you guys are not hiring. So yes, we are. So it takes a while for that message to get passed along. So it's hard to compare when you look at it because we did see an increase of people applying. But then COVID hit, the financial talk about budget before, the budget being cut, things like that. So you had a fall off on people applying. So as long as we keep going through those cycles, you're always going to have fall off applying. But right now in the region, we are the preferred department to work for. And like I said, prior to not having class, we had a pool of 80 something people that we could have chose from. That got dwindled down where people found other things to do. Where someone into military, Raytown hired a couple, independents, a couple Kansas agencies hired a couple out of those pools. So when the narrative always circulates around, we're not hiring budget-wise, whatever, your numbers will drop off, and it takes a while to build those numbers back up.
So do you think the fact that we were at the bottom of the pay scale hurt us as well? I mean, at least we got that up now, so that's going to help. I would like to be at the top because I feel we're still taking more risk than anybody else out there. We should be at the top.
And that's correct. And we did see a bump once that pay scale. And actually, it's interesting. We had some people who left who want to reapply because we got the pay raise.
Excellent.
I'll just say briefly with respect to them, and I want to single out Sergeant Vidiaco and actually Chief Smith. My nephew was one of those kids who's now in the Army. And oddly enough, had nothing to do with pay, actually, right? He wanted to be a Kansas City police officer because he's seen them his whole life. He's from East Kansas City. he's not rah-rah G.I. Joe. He just wanted to help his community. And I continue to think that the work that you all do, just being out there and present, is as much of a guide on things as anything else in the world. And I want to commend you, Sergeant, because although we were talking about raw numbers, when I was looking at the demographic makeup of, I guess, our next class, and again, love all people the same, but we hear from a lot of people that say they want to make sure the department reflects the community. You have, from a set of 25, 10 white male candidates, 5 black male candidates, 3 Hispanic male, 5 white women, 1 black woman, 1 Asian man. I mean, that's actually more representative of the city, at least let's say, for example, in black men, than might otherwise actually be the case. And so I commend you at a time when there is a lot of narrative out there. And I saw that from my nephew. My sister's crazy. So his mama wasn't necessarily somebody who grew up in a police family or anything, but y'all were still able to kind of get through and say, this is a good job. And, to your point, getting past the narrative, are they hiring now or not, or I'll go join the service or I'll do something else. I mean, that's the work that you do. And I think we're doing a pretty darn good job of it. So hopefully with some more resources, with some more wind at our back on what we're all talking about with policing, we'll be able to do even better.
You'll find the personnel summary in tab E.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear.
The personnel summary is in tab E. On December 31st of 2021, KCPD had a strength of 1,697 employees. A breakdown shows that we have 1,159 law enforcement members, 507 non-sworn members, 26 recruits in the academy, and 5 board members. In January of 2022, KCPD lost another 6 members to retirement or resignation. 2 recruits resigned, and 2 recruits left the academy, but we rehired them for non-sworn jobs. And 1 non-sworn member left. We know in February we're going to lose another 3 law enforcement members to retirements. And we're projecting right now, we know at least 1 possibly in March. In 2021, the separation rate, the average separation rate per month for KCPD was 19.6. That's the highest it's been in over 4 years. The last 3-year average was at 15.5 a month. In 2021, KCPD lost 226 employees to separation, which is 63 more than the previous 3-year average of 163 per year. So in 2020, there was 166 members left. 2019, we had 165 members left. And in 2018, we had 160 members left. So hiring has been a significant factor in our department's strength and maintaining that strength. In 2021, KCPD only hired 77 new employees. When I say employees, this is law enforcement and non-sworn together. In 2020, KCPD hired 92 new employees. In 2019, KCPD hired 186 new members. And in 2018, KCPD hired 204 new employees. So from 2018 to 2021, KCPD lost 717 employees, but only hired 559. That's a loss of 158 members. In 2022, there are 210 law enforcement members that are eligible to retire. We don't know the non-sworn number. We don't have the ability to look in our system and determine non-sworn retirement rates because our system was built in 1968. We have 22 recruits in the academy right now that will be graduating in March. On February 7th, we are starting a new academy class that will have 20 recruits. We would like to start another academy class in May. We continue to hire for all non-sworn positions all throughout the department. We continue to recruit for law enforcement as much as we can. And that's my report. If you have any questions.
Wow, those are some interesting numbers. So of the 500, those are including the classes, the recruitment classes?
Yes.
I don't have any questions. Any questions?
How
Thank
big will
you.
the class be in May?
We won't know until we get the next fiscal year's budget. We have a pool right now of potential candidates for that class, and we continue to add to that pool. So we're hoping it can be, I would love for it to be as big as the academy can handle, which would be a 50 recruit class. That's what we're working towards.
So the 22 we have now, are those confirmed that, I mean, they've passed everything so far that will be starting the academy? Or is that
They're in the academy now. They've
Okay,
been in for
okay.
months. They graduate
Okay.
in March.
All right,
Yeah.
so the
They're-
26 that we had, we lost a few more then.
Yes.
Gotcha.
Yes.
Okay. And then the 20 recruits now are ones that have already been vetted and are ready to start?
Correct. They're confirmed, and we reported those 20 to post, so they are ready for the academy to start on February 7th.
February 7th, okay. Yeah, we need to get those numbers up.
Yeah.
Thank you, Deputy Chief. Executive Services Bureau.
Yes, sir. I get to say good morning again because we rarely made it. I usually am not that person, so barely. I first want to talk about a radio update. I want to thank the mayor. I want to thank the city manager. I really want to thank Tammy Queen at the city. We had really good discussions about this radio issue. I think we, as a police department, actually educated the city a little bit on what's going on with their radio system as well. We have talked with one of the two companies about bids for the radios. We'll be talking to the second company here on February the 3rd. We are getting ready to do the testing on both of these radios. Our radio shop will put them through all kinds of tests to see which radio stands up the best. If you see, I provided a small packet. It's this packet that was left. It's just information for you. Yes, it's just information. It shows you both the radios. It shows you what the fire department's done. Just some information that you can read to understand it. Hopefully, by the next board meeting, we'll be able to give you a solid update of where we're at that point after the testing has been done and we've finished up the meetings with the companies to get the bids. I also wanted to tell you I was in touch with the fire chief. I had a nice conversation with her on the phone of what they've done and where they are at and how they went through their complete process. So with that, I'll take any questions if you have any updates or questions about the radios. Okay. All of the items for the Executive Services Bureau will be located under tab B. The first item is budget transfers. The first is a general fund transfer of $2,290,000 from contractual services and $450,000 from commodities to personal services. This transfer will place the money into salaries of officers for the recent pay scale adjustments that were approved by the board at the last board meeting. And just as a side note, this wasn't in my notes, but after listening to the conversation, it's probably one of the biggest things that has happened since I've been a deputy chief. The phone calls that we've received from officers, sergeants, everyone on the civilians on this police department, we're so thankful that happened. So thank you for that last month. The second part of that transfer is police grant funds. We would request $100,750 within personal services and $8,000 within contractual services. All of those transfers can be found on the pages behind the memo, and I would request your approval for those transfers.
I move approval.
Second. It's been moved and second. All in favor by sign of aye.
Aye.
All opposed by no. Ayes have it.
Thank you. The second item is adjustment of special revenue accounts.
Right under that same tab?
Yes, sir. It's the next item on tab B. It's an adjustment of special revenue accounts request.
It's B.
D. Is it
B as in boy.
B.
Sorry, B as in boy.
There.
It's the adjustment of special revenue accounts. Request approval of transfer of $3,000 within special services fund in order to purchase some minor equipment. This is to purchase a new badge printer in the private officer's license. Each person that comes in gets a badge printed, and I'd request your approval to transfer that $3,000.
I move approval.
Second. Second, all in favor by sign of aye.
Aye.
All opposed by no. Ayes have it.
The next item will be Operation Legend Supplemental Award.
BC.
C. I would request the board accept this $500,000 award from the U.S. Department of Justice. This is the second supplemental award we have received. This money from this award will be used to purchase equipment and overtime for the staff in the Real-Time Crime Center. I would request your acceptance of this award.
I move approval.
Second. All in favor by sign of aye.
Aye.
All opposed by no. Ayes have it.
Item D.
Oh, I see how it's going now. It's going across.
Yes, exactly. You're with us.
Is the DNA Backlog Reduction Program. The Office of Justice Programs notified the department that we have been awarded $586,921 for the DNA Capacity Enhancement and Backlog Reduction Program. This award is 100% federally funded. This is the 20th year of funding on this. This grant funds salary and benefits for 5 forensic specialists and the addition of 1 new forensic specialist. I'd request the board accept the funds.
Move approval.
Second. All in favor by sign of aye.
Aye.
All opposed by no. Ayes have it.
Then the last item is a board resolutions. The department holds accounts also. We did this last month, I think, with UMB. This month, we hold accounts with the Greater Kansas City Public Safety Credit Union. The board resolution needs to be updated due to the changes on the board, as well as changes within the fiscal division. I'd request your approval of this resolution, and then at the conclusion of the board meeting, I'll have Major McCollum get the necessary signatures for the at the completion of the board meeting.
Move approval.
Just a quick question. In our board book, it still has Commissioner Wagner, who I imagine it was when he was board president, listed in our set of folks. And although even though he could endorse all checks on his personal account, I want to make sure we're not causing any trouble for him. Should it be Tolbert, or am I missing something on that? This part. Maybe I'm looking.
I think it's because he's the treasurer.
Yeah.
Right. That's what I thought.
Okay, I thought it'd be board president. Yeah. Thank you, David. Second.
All in favor by sign of aye.
Aye.
All opposed by no. Ayes have it.
And the only thing else I have is, I know she's not here today, but I want to thank Captain Jennifer Crump. She just got promoted. She was a sergeant for the last several years in the Executive Services Bureau and was recently promoted. And I'm sure she's watching today after being here for so many board meetings, as you know. So I just wanted to thank her. She went through so many budget processes and a lot of things that makes this department run. So, and we have Sergeant Bobby King, who will be our new operations sergeant in the Executive Services Bureau.
Yeah, she was very helpful and patient.
Yeah, so I just want to thank now Captain Crump. So any other questions, I'm happy to answer.
I'll mention something very briefly. My staff tells me I can, and we talked about it right before the meeting. A very knock on wood, and one never puts the cart before the horse. As we all are familiar, 2 years ago, this city pulled off a fairly good Super Bowl celebration parade. We did the same after the Royals won the World Series. It's relevant to the budget conversation just because there is a cost. We recognize that. I believe there are already conversations with the department. In the event our team were to be successful again, we would, unlike last year, we would plan to have an outdoor event that reflects that, which we've done previously. But we'll make sure that we continue communication with you and everybody in emergency operations, among other things. So just wanted to note that and let folks know those conversations have already started. I know the chief works closely on those.
Yeah, we have started the process, and like you say, we'll hope we don't bring bad luck to anybody, but obviously these things can't be planned in 3 days. The monetary commitment is large, a couple $100,000 just in PD expenses alone. So we're working through that, as you say, and talking to all the partners. And it has been helpful that obviously we've been through this not too long ago, so we can dust some things off and apply new names and other things like that. So we have a template anyway to work from. So we are in that process, and we appreciate everyone's support in that, the city.
Thank you. And that money comes from where?
Over here.
Yeah, it's part of a discussion, but identifying it in advance is part of, I think, what we're trying to.
Right. As I talked to the mayor ahead of time, whenever we had the last parade, there was a lot of, actually we prepared one and we didn't have the parade, and then we were prepared the next year to have the parade. Some of that funding actually came from the NFL. Some of that funding came from the Chiefs. And then obviously the rest of the funding came from the city. So there's a pool of money, but as it's hard to go around. It's expensive to have a parade.
So along those budget lines, I know we kind of briefly talked about the American Recovery Act money in our last budget session, and we're still looking into that. I mean, I look at it as we had an officer die of COVID. We've had hundreds sick from it. People are still out, long haulers, and we haven't got any of that pandemic money. I think maybe that could be helpful in, supporting a increase in wages for our officers with that money and incentive pay. I know fire got it, and, I just don't really understand yet why we haven't. And I'm very supportive of fire getting it, but I feel like that would really help support our officers and they would appreciate it, especially during times like this. If we could fit that in somehow to our budget too. And I know, Mr. Mayor, we briefly talked about that last time. So I just am going to be the squeaky wheel here.
Sure. And just for transparency, and I'll talk further probably than the Colonel will, American Rescue Plan, because there is some narrowing of uses, is being discussed as a potential source for our substantial radio costs, as well as hazard pay. The general view has not been to have it be in salaries long-term, but hazard pay, which Kansas City, as we discussed, Kansas City Fire Department received, is the sort of area that would be appropriate, and that's where most of the discussion at City Hall is.
So the distinction is it would be like a bonus rather than part of.
Yeah. Yes, thank you, Chief, because I may get in federal trouble if I say bonus. It's a one-time relief for.
We've made, as we had discussions, we've made the request to the city manager.
Yep.
Officially made a request.
Great. And Commissioner Kramer's not lost on the city's side.
Right.
Of where it can be best employed.
With inflation now 7%, that's very helpful. Thank you.
Does that complete your
Yes, sir.
presentation?
Yes, sir.
All right. So let's see if I am correct. Office of General Counsel?
No, sir.
No? One more?
I think I'm next.
Okay.
Professional development and research.
Yes. And my information will be under tab C. I usually start out with an academy update. Mike covered most of that, so if you don't have any question of that, I won't go over that again. One thing I will piggyback on the Captain Barnes and Sergeant Bediaco just discussed about recruitment. They do a great job, but they're a small shop. One of the sergeants at the academy has taken on a task, and he's putting a group together, 15 to 20 officers up various ranks, and they will be a supplement to our recruiting efforts. And as schools start getting back in session here in the coming weeks, they'll really get geared up and start going. They've already made one recruitment video, almost finished a second. So they're being proactive, and we're trying to help HR filling up our classes. So I thought it was important that y'all knew that that was in the works. If there are no questions, I'll move on to the youth services update real quick. Our attendance for the month of December was 693 kids, and we fed approximately 50 meals a day there at the facility. And the food is available to the kids as well as they're leaving. If there's anything left, they can take some of that stuff home and so it doesn't go to waste, for lack of a better way to say it. Sergeant Skip Cox submitted the final Children's Service Fund report in December. He completed a lengthy survey expressing how PAL has been dramatically impacted from a staffing standpoint due to COVID and other things. As a result, the Children's Services Fund will be awarding an additional 25% payment of PAL's total annual award for 2022, or an additional $26,250. So every little bit helps, and Skip does, Sergeant Cox does a wonderful job of staying up on that and taking any opportunity to get money for that endeavor. So kudos to him.
Yes.
Youth services events for the month of December included numerous DARE graduations. The aforementioned PAL holiday party, where around 300 kids participated along with their parents. It's one of our biggest events and most celebrated events. And we had the PAL holiday meal delivery as well. For January and early February, here's a list of upcoming events. If you'll scroll through of DARE graduations, and there's a big PAL fundraiser in February as well there. So if there are no more questions on PAL, I have one item on the consent agenda, proposed PPBM 210-2, release of personnel information, or personal information, excuse me. If there are no questions, I would recommend approval.
I move approval.
Second. All in favor by sign of aye?
Aye.
All opposed by no?
That's my report, sir.
Now, Office of the General Counsel, is that correct?
Good afternoon. The information is under tab G. It is the monthly summary, and that's all I have for today. Do you have any questions?
She is in girl.
She is in girl. Or she is in great year.
Questions from me? Any questions from the board? I don't think we need to accept that report, right? No. All right. Thank you. Office of Community Complaints.
Good morning. We don't have a formal report this morning. I just wanted to make an announcement that the 8th annual Badges and Baseball event is scheduled for Saturday, February the 12th at 10 o'clock a.m. at the Urban Youth Academy. Again, this is our annual event that we've been doing for the past 8 years, where we bring officers and area youth together to participate in baseball drills while also doing some information sharing and some bridge building. We'll make sure that the information is provided in the Daily Informant because we need officers to volunteer. But I'll just go ahead and say now, Officer Jerry Grubb at the Regional Police Academy, he is coordinating the volunteer effort on the officer side, and Director Darwin Penny with the Urban Youth Academy is handling the participant sign up. So I think there'll also be a web link that'll be provided for any area youth that want to participate in this event. And this event is open to any youth here in the Kansas City metro area, but also members of different law enforcement agencies in the area will be participating as well. So we're really excited. Again, this is our 8th year of having this event. And I'm going ahead and stretching now because I'm going to be sore.
And it starts at what time?
10 o'clock a.m.
10 a.m. And is that indoors?
Yes, yes,
Okay.
yes.
All right. I would hope so in February.
Thank you.
In Orlando.
Right. All right. Public comments, and I have on the sheet only one name, Ron Hunt.
You still got 2 minutes, Ron.
Saw Ron jumping up in the audience when we were talking.
Thank you to the board, to the mayor, to the chief of police. I just wanted to, I got elected to be the president of Blue Hills. It was something that I didn't really want it, but they gave it to me. First of all, I want to really thank.
I'm sorry.
y'all.
Could you stay at the microphone? There are people that are watching and they're going to want to
Oh, okay,
hear
I'm used to
you.
walking and talk. Okay, that's fine. Now, let
I'm
me
sorry.
behave. Okay, I want to really start off by saying that y'all recruited one of our favorite community police officers, which is Bobby King. Bobby King has helped us in Blue Hills for over 6 years since I've been there. I mean, her heart is really into it. I mean, she doesn't probably kind of agree with some of my tactics, but one thing that her and I do agree on, that we want our neighborhood safe. And so I could call her at night, we could call her at night. We really miss you, Bobby, and we're really supportive of your promotion and stuff like that. You got something, you got a jewel in Bobby King. But let me go ahead and start with this. I keep hearing what I want you people to understand. If you're not investing in neighborhoods, you're spending your money, you're spinning your wheels. I can't stress enough that police department, and I love my police department, but they can't regulate behaviors. They can't regulate what goes on in my house. They can't regulate what goes on up the street. They respond to crime. And I say this because I want you all to realize that you gotta invest in neighborhoods. That's where people live. I mean, we know everything. You talk about how can we get rid of guns and why don't you ask some of the neighborhood residents who live there? In the 5th district, we have one of the highest districts in the city. And we get just a little bitty bit of money for our community policing, $10,000. And that's been going on for the past 3 or 4 decades. $10,000. So I'll meet with the mayor probably on that issue, on what we can increase on. Yeah, I brought a lady here. She's over here. She's with Southtown Round Top, 29th and Monroe. Their headquarters burnt up. She's having a hard time, Bishop, getting support from the city just to get that neighborhood association started off the ground. This is where high crime exists, and these high in the 3rd and the 5th district. So I'm saying all that to say this: if you want, we don't have a safe city. Let's cut up across all of that. Our city's broken because if I'm not safe, you're not safe. I talked to one detective that lives over in Brookside. I said, if the city was spend and invest, I pay taxes.
Right, your 2 minutes are up, but I'm gonna give you 30 more seconds.
Okay. I voted him in. I voted the mayor, which is a great mayor. I love him. I voted our city council people in. You got to do the right thing with our money. You got to be good stewards with our money. I mean, if you're not investing in people's lives, we're going to be talking about this for the next 15 to 20 years. It's the neighborhood association. That's where the power is. Bobby helped us real good in our neighborhood, Bishop. Not just, and you talking about getting recruits and stuff like that, young people. I told Ms. Barnes, I worked with Barnes and the other officer. You got to let the neighborhood association talk to our kids and say, hey, you may be a good candidate for the police department. Y'all need help. But if y'all not taking care of, if money's not coming in my community, funding blight, homelessness, mental health, all these things contribute to high crime. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Ron. General discussion from Chief Smith.
Well, good afternoon. I have just a couple of things real quick. I know you might have noticed there's an empty seat next to me, and that's because Deputy Chief Mabin and Major Keith Kirchhoff are both at the FBI National Academy. They started in January 3rd, I believe. They went out there and they return March 17th, or they complete their training out there March 17th. So I've texted back and forth. I told Joe he was missing a great board meeting. Of course, he was disappointed, but he is out there and they're having a good time, and they're going to learn a lot and meet a lot of great people. So I just wanted to let the board know that's where Joe is. The other thing I had to talk about is we all received an email from the mayor about it's a program. Let's see, Bloomberg Harvard for collaborative, for public safety in Kansas City. And Mayor, did you want to expand on that a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. The Bloomberg Foundation started, of course, by the billionaire and former mayor of New York, Michael Bloomberg, looks for ways to help support cities on any number of issues, sometimes neighborhood improvement and blight, but also public safety type issues, trying to find creative solutions to, in essence, get everybody to work together closely. And so the collaborative program is not just the Bloomberg Foundation, but a number of professors from the Harvard Business School that have a desire of pulling a set of some of us that would all just, in essence, be kind of put into a program where you're not quite locking everybody in a room for a day and saying, figure it out, but something similar to that. How do we come to long-term programmatic funding ideas? To what extent do we need to see an earlier commitment from the city on the very real neighborhood issues that Mr. Hunt notes, for example? Where can we look to have agreements long-term? Kind of following in the meeting that Bishop Tolbert had organized, an opportunity for us to take, and I would assume, I learned from my staff, I'm actually not invited, but I'd imagine there'd be top-ranking command staff folks, some folks from the city, perhaps Ms. Queen in the finance department and others, and having an opportunity to look at how do we come up with collaborative approaches to address for us different challenges we face. But this would be more on the administrative side. The foundation does not purport to tell people how to fix violent crime, because he didn't invite Bill Bratton or somebody to be a part of it. Instead, it's how can the different groups work together to, I think, answer some of the public concerns that we're having. It is a free program. It will involve, I think, sending 8 people from Kansas City. I know it will be several from the police department, several from the city itself, and perhaps the prosecutor's offices, probably Jackson County, given the volume of work we have there. They'd go to New York City for a number of days to work with the academics, the foundation folks. My big hope is that there are some grants that come out of it afterwards, where they continue to fund different areas for us. And then hopefully the work product is that we come back with at least folks that have built some strong relationships, but more to that point, we have some good working approaches. Colonel Niemeyer, for example, was humble before. I think part of the reason the radio discussion has been so smooth is in part he spent time at City Hall, knows all the people. And actually, for those who don't know, the police chief, myself, Colonel Niemeyer, city manager, finance director, met on Martin Luther King Day for 90 minutes. Actually, our budget staff did too, folks giving up their holiday. And so finding a way that we can kind of get to those solutions earlier is part of the goal of the program. It's not a sort of thing where we really need to even report back with some big fancy report. It's instead building relationships, coming up with ways that we can work better long term. And I think their goal isn't just that police chief and mayor and prosecutor sit around each day and figuring out our budget challenges.
Is that something we have to approve?
Theoretically, I would say this at the city too, we can disapprove anything. And so certainly welcome a feedback on that, but because of the lack of a cost, I think the biggest commitment would be who the chief would elect to send to be a part of it. And that's probably the most of our commitment and some set of days for.
And it'll cover even the expenses of the people
Yes.
to travel to New York and all that. I have no objection.
Great, thank you, Mayor. Appreciate it. The other thing I wanted to talk about is when Captain Cobalt came up and gave his presentation, I feel very fortunate to be part of the police department and the officers, the men and women in the department who worked their tails off on violent crime this past year. As you know, we had a rough ride in 2020 and it was carrying into 2021 and we still had way too many homicides. It's encouraging to see our non-fatal shootings go down. I don't know where this year is going to land us, where we're going to be, but it is evident that the dedication of people who are out here every day trying to do everything they can to make this city safe, and whether that's someone strolling up to a Chiefs game or the traffic afterwards or working on the very violent offenders through shoot review, it takes a team of everybody, the people who do the cars, the computers, all of it together makes who we are. So I think it's very nice to be able to report one of 6 major cities that saw a reduction of 10 homicide victims compared to every other city in America. And I think, I can't say for a fact that it's anything that we did, but I hope to heck we're influencing that. And I hope the work that we are doing is influencing those things that happen in our city. So I just wanted to thank everyone and be fortunate that we could be talking about a much different scenario, and we're not.
Thank you, Chief. Yeah, and it would be nice, to kind of know what is driving that reduction so that we could duplicate it and do more of it. But, that's the $64 million question. Approval of open session minutes from December 9th and December the 14th.
I move approval of both.
Second. All in favor by sign of aye?
Aye.
All opposed by no. Ayes have it. David Kenner?
Nothing at this time.
Mayor Lucas?
I'll second what the chief had to say. At the U.S. Conference of Mayors, I sat on panels with the mayors of Chicago, Albuquerque, New York City, visited and talked to all of them. It's a position that I'm proud to be in, to sit across from some of the mayors of great American cities, and they're talking about the trend lines they're on that are very negative, and that we're in a different direction. Bishop, to your question, I think everybody's trying to figure out what that magic potion is. I would say part of it is people still meeting with each other. And, on the toughest days, and I will emphasize this a lot, I called the chief, said, let's meet on Martin Luther King Day. Let's see what we can get to on this budget issue. We didn't know if we'd agree at the end, but it's meetings like that. It's Captain Cobalt who will come to City Hall and listen to people, ask them a whole bunch of questions for 2 hours about things. It's all of that. And so I just encourage us to keep doing that and to have a sense of pride in, and I hope where we're going. It's hard, Chief, and I understand why it's hard because we got too much, and it's not anybody saying that we're where we need to be, but maybe we're going the direction that we need to be.
Thank you. Commissioner, Chief, you had something? Yeah. Commissioner Kramer?
Well, and along those lines too, I've lived in many different cities, and I have to say, I think what makes Kansas City so unique and special is people care and they have big hearts. And you see it here. And, me just coming on and in the middle of, 2021 and getting to work with such a great group, I just feel really blessed to be here and to see what the chief has done, because I think, the chief and this whole department you guys have done a great job. So I know there's always room for improvement, but I think you guys have done a heck of a job. So thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Wagner?
Nothing except just to echo that proud of the direction we're going. And we know some of what's helping. And so we just continue to do the right thing.
Thank you. Commissioner Dean?
Yes, when the chief was talking about the culture of the department, one of the things that I've been impressed with are the stories that I hear about the kindness that our officers do when nobody's watching. And many of you probably read the story in the Star about homelessness. And there was a homeless man that was quoted in the Star that he tried to get into a shelter and couldn't because he'd been drinking. So that violated the laws of the shelter, the rules of the shelter. And he just laid down in just a coat underneath a tree. 2 police officers, of course, he's telling this story. He didn't tell the officers' names, but 2 police officers came and got him up, woke him up, took him to a McDonald's, bought him 2 burritos, and arranged with McDonald's that he could stay there until he was warm. And he said, if it weren't for those officers, I probably would have frozen to death. I'm very proud that our officers do that on a daily basis. They are kind to the community on a personal level, on a daily basis, and I thank all of you.
And which goes to a point I've been talking about for some time, that there needs to be a PR that is specifically pointed toward that, so that we do get more of those stories out, because there are more that happens. And I think when you pour more good stories on top of more good stories, when something bad does happen, it's already diluted. So thank you for mentioning that, Commissioner Dean, because I want us to, talk further about finding that PR firm. All right, thank you. I think that concludes our meeting. Board disciplinary hearings, is that something we do out here to talk about that schedule? Or that's in?
We just need a motion to go into close.
I think we need a motion to go
I
out
second.
of public and then
Yes.
another motion to go into close.
Move to go into closed session pursuant to RISMO 610 and other subsections.
Second,
Talbot, yeah,
Lucas, aye.
Dean, I.
Kramer, aye.
Talbot, aye. All right, thank you.